Chapter 1449. The 5 signs of Deva made use of the power of heaven and earth to weaken the source of a cultivator's strength. There were extremely few people who could cultivate the secret skills of the mystic heaven record successfully. It was already rare for Enigma Palace cultivators to be able to cultivate the first 2 signs of decay. Since the ancient era, there were not many people who could cultivate all 5 signs of decay successfully. The 5 signs of Deva were extremely powerful. If all 5 signs of decay were released and used on a single person at the same time, that person's dermic powers, essence spirit, physique, bloodline and lifespan would be exhausted. Even if that person did not die, they would be equivalent to a cripple. The most frightening thing was that that person would have to watch helplessly as their dermic powers, essence spirit, physique, bloodline and lifespan were exhausted. They would have to experience that pain and endure that torture. In the ancient era, some cultivators would not be able to endure until the end and their Tao hearts would crumble, killing themselves on the spot. For them to be able to cultivate to this point, having their Tao crippled was even more unbearable than being killed. Su Zimo's expression was cold as he sensed the changes that were happening in his body. Heavenly Secret's combat strength was indeed strong. If he encountered Heavenly Secrets a few years ago, he would most likely be doomed. But now, the Qinglian true body was reborn and the current Su Zimo was equivalent to a reborn grade 7 Qinglian. The creation Qinglian was said to be an utmost treasure of the upper world that was created through the creation of heaven and earth. However, no matter how strong the 5 signs of Deva was, they were merely borrowing the power of heaven and earth. Let's see if your 5 signs of Deva is stronger or if my Qinglian true body is stronger. Su Zimo's gaze shone brightly as he channeled his bloodline with all his might. Enveloped by the power of the 5 signs of Deva, his aura rose rapidly against the trend. In the blink of an eye, he broke through a critical point. Su Zimo's figure seemed to have vanished from the spot and was replaced by a creation Qinglian that soared into the skies and connected heaven and earth. Its entire body was dark green, like jade, sparkling, translucent, and flawless. A gigantic lotus flower bloomed slowly and shone with auspicious colors. It was a bloodline phenomenon. This is the Qinglian creation. The many half-martial ancestors of the Enigma Palace exclaimed. Even Heavenly Secrets frowned. His plan was flawless. He could predict everything under the heavens and deduce the people under the heavens, but he had no way to deal with Su Zimo. He had once tried to deduce Su Zimo's matter, but he had almost suffered a backlash and his primordial spirit had almost been destroyed. Since then, he never dared to try again. Whether it was the Battle of Baiming Town or the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, very few people in the cultivation world knew about it. They were even less aware that Su Zimo had grown to such a level. From the looks of it, Araki Takashi has already fused with Qinglian. How terrifying! As expected of the eternal monster. Does this mean that Araki Takashi and Good Fortune Qinglian are growing at the same time? As his cultivation advances, so will Good Fortune Qinglian? That's a little scary. If Fortune Qinglian grows to the 8th grade, I'm afraid even Emperor weapons won't be able to destroy her. Many half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace could not help but exclaim when they saw that. The power of the 5 signs of heavenly being dissipated gradually. The 5 signs of heavenly being could weaken anyone. However, it could not do anything to Good Fortune Qinglian. Half-martial ancestor Shinjio said coldly, "What's there to worry about? Let's join forces and kill Araki Takashi here. Once and for all, we'll eliminate all future troubles." That's right. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian nodded as well. Everyone, Araki Takashi is colluding with the primordial taboo and is up to no good. He's even more dangerous than Shura. We can't let him leave. Half-martial ancestor Li Heng hesitated for a moment. However, when he saw that Qian Tian and Shinjio had already charged forward, he could only follow suit. The 10 half-martial ancestors charged forward once more. The green lotus of good fortune swayed gently and emitted a terrifying power. The entire space suddenly rippled like the surface of a calm lake. The 10 half-martial ancestors had grim expressions. Although the ripples seemed weak, they were extremely terrifying. Even if they collided with them physically, they would be smashed into pieces. The 10 half-martial ancestors controlled their destiny dermic weapons and blocked in front of them, dispersing the incoming ripples. It was not easy to defend against the ripples. The 10 half-martial ancestors shuddered and looked at Su Zimo with even more fear. Bang, bang, bang. After catching their breaths, Heavenly Secrets joined forces with the 10 half-martial ancestors and counterattacked. Dermic arts tore through the air one after another, and the power of half-martial ancestors descended in a torrential manner, striking the good fortune Qinglian. The attacks poured down like a torrential downpour. There were a few times when the good fortune Qinglian was bent and almost crushed. However, the good fortune Qinglian straightened its body and stood proudly. The wind and rain intensified. Finally, the good fortune Qinglian could not hold on any longer. The lotus leaves on the good fortune Qinglian were riddled with holes, and wounds appeared on the stem as well. Su Zimo could not hold on any longer, and his human form appeared once more. "Araki Takashi, you're finished," Heavenly Secrets said coldly. "Not necessarily." As Su Zimo's blood chi surged, the wounds on his body healed rapidly. His gaze inadvertently landed on the exquisite killing formation below. At that moment, two figures walked out of the exquisite killing formation slowly. Heavenly Secrets' expression changed as though he had realized something. In a flash, he dodged into the distance. Right then, a pitch-black saber beam descended from the skies. It possessed endless hatred and torrential killing intent as it slashed down in the direction of Heavenly Secrets. Heavenly Secrets had already sensed it and dodged first. However, the other half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace was not as lucky. When the half-martial ancestor saw that he could not dodge, he raised the saber in his hands instinctively, wanting to defend and find an opportunity to escape. Clang! The pitch-black saber beam collided against his saber. The saber beam shuddered and revealed its true form. It was Shura Yenbeichen's Hatred Fiend saber. Fiend chi surged. The saber of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace shattered instantly. The saber beam expanded and sliced the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace into two. Fresh blood spewed out. The half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace channeled his dermic powers furiously, wanting to recondense the lower half of his body. However, the pitch-black fiend chi contained within the Hatred Fiend saber had already surged into his body through his wounds. Not only did the fiend chi contain the Hatred Fiend chi, Shura's fiend chi as well. The power formed from hatred and killing rampaged through the body of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace, destroying all life. If the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace abandoned his body right away and released his essence spirit to escape the battlefield, he might have been able to survive. However, it was already too late by the time he realized what was going on. The fiend chi surged into his mind and tore through his consciousness instantly, devouring his essence spirit. In the blink of an eye, his essence spirit was destroyed and his body was destroyed. The half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace was dead. Heavenly Secrets, pay with your life. A roar filled with hatred and killing intent echoed through the world. Anyone who heard it would be able to sense the grief and fury in that roar. At this point of the battle, Su Zimo had finally won some time. The Shura had appeared. Chapter 1450. In the depths of the Sky Evolution mountain range, in a long tunnel, there were two sneaky figures carefully moving forward. Little Fatty was at the front with a map in his left hand and a compass in his right. From time to time, he would compare them before digging forward. Enigma Palace seems to be making quite a commotion. Shurjian followed behind and muttered softly. At that moment, they were already deep underground and could no longer hear the voices above. However, the sounds of the battle continued from time to time. The ground shook and mud would splatter occasionally. The two of them were already covered in dust even though they had yet to catch a glimpse of the tomb. Who knows? Logically speaking, Shura should have been killed by the exquisite killing formation a long time ago. Could something have happened? Shurjian shook his head. By the time Su Zimo and the others arrived, Shurjian had already dug underground and did not know what was happening above. All they knew was that the sounds of battle were endless. Who cares? The more intense the battle, the better. That way, there's no chance of us being exposed. Shi Jian shook his head and remarked casually before continuing to study the treasure map. Can you do it? How long has it been and you haven't even caught a glimpse of the tomb? Shi Jian came over and grumbled. Little Fatty was sweating profusely as well as he replied embarrassedly, the tomb is truly difficult to find and there are layers of restrictions. We've already broken more than 10 of them along the way. This Sky Evolution mountain range is truly strange. My compass isn't working well after we entered and I can't tell the direction. Could we be lost? Shi Jian was shocked. Little Fatty shook his head hurriedly. Don't worry. Based on the location on the map, we're almost there. The tomb is so hidden and sealed with layers of restrictions. There must be a great treasure here. Hurry up, let's work harder. Little Fatty urged. Shi Jian controlled the 5 elements puppets and continued digging according to Little Fatty's instructions. With the puppets clearing the way, it saved time and effort. Furthermore, Little Fatty and Shi Jian would not be implicated if there were any dangers. After a while, Little Fatty shouted, "Stop!" Shi Jian's divine sense moved, and the 5 elements puppet stopped. Looking at the location, it should be about time. It's on the left. I'll do it myself. Little Fatty rubbed his chubby palms, raised the shovel in his hand, and dug to the left. Not long after, the shovel became lighter. Little Fatty's eyes lit up. He grinned and said, "Done. I finally dug it out. I'll go pick some treasures first." Shi Jian was invigorated and hurriedly pushed Little Fatty away. He dug a few times at the entrance of the cave and burrowed in through the entrance. Halfway through, Shi Jian raised his head and froze. Little Fatty was waiting at the back. Seeing Shi Jian stop halfway, he couldn't help but urge him, "Hurry up and get in, don't get stuck here." Little Fatty couldn't wait any longer. He pushed Shi Jian over with both hands and then climbed over himself. After entering the tomb, Little Fatty was excited and started searching around with his beady eyes. The tomb chamber was a little strange. It wasn't big and was completely empty apart from a single person. Little Fatty was stunned as he stared fixedly at the person in front of him with widened eyes. Why was there a person here? The person's back was facing them and his body emitted a life aura. It was clear that he wasn't a dead person, but a living person. Right then, the person turned around slowly and sighed. "You guys are finally here. I almost suffocated to death." "Lin Xuanji!" Little Fatty and Shi Jian exclaimed. The person in the tomb chamber was Lin Xuanji, who invited the two of them here. "Unlucky," Shi Jian said indignantly, "to think that the lad would beat us to it. What a waste of effort." "Something's not right." Little Fatty frowned and scanned his surroundings. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. This isn't a tomb chamber. Shi Jian gradually realized as well and mumbled, "This looks like a prison cell." Lin Xuanji coughed gently with an embarrassed expression. Little Fatty gradually realized something and hollered, "F*** me, Lin Xuanji. How dare you get a stupid treasure map to trick the two of us into coming all the way here to dig up a tomb while you're locked up here?" Little Fatty rushed forward with bloodshot eyes and a furious expression. He gripped Lin Xuanji's neck tightly with both hands, wishing that he could strangle the latter to death. ****, Lin Xuanji, you're so mean." Shi Jian snapped out of his daze and could not help but curse. All right. Lin Xuanji struggled for a moment before heaving a sigh of relief and panting. "I wasn't lying to you guys. There's indeed a treasure here. Where is it? Take it out." The Little Fatty spread out his big hands and said angrily. If Lin Xuanji could not take out the treasure, Shi Jian was going to rush up and strangle the latter to death. Lin Xuanji coughed and pointed to himself, declaring righteously, "I'm the greatest treasure. What treasure can be more precious than me?" ****. Little Fatty and Shi Jian felt their stomachs churn and nearly vomited on the spot. The two of them truly had no choice against such a shameless person. "Silly Jian, weren't you clamoring for you to pick a treasure? I'll give you this treasure." Little Fatty pointed to Lin Xuanji. Shi Jian resisted and said in disdain, "I don't want it. This old man is too much of a scammer. He's even more of a scammer than you. Brothers, I had no choice but to do this, Lin Xuanji explained. I was schemed against by my fellow sect mates and was locked up here with no way of getting out. Then why did you send out the treasure map? Little Fatty asked with a sideways glance. I have some tricks up my sleeve and it wasn't difficult for me to send out a message. Lin Xuanji said, after thinking about it, the only people who can save me are the two of you brothers. You've been raiding tombs for many years and are extremely experienced. No one can compare to you. Be it the tomb of a mighty figure or a patriarch, the two of you can come and go as you please. There are layers of restrictions below and there's no way to determine the direction. Only the two of you can overcome all the obstacles and find this place. Although you're only Dharma Dao Jun, your methods are something that even conjoint body mighty figures and Mahayana patriarchs can't compare to. Given your capabilities, you'll definitely leave your names in history. Lin Xuanji was eloquent, praising the two of them to the skies with extravagant words. Shi Jian was already in a daze and was completely immersed in it, fantasizing about his name going down in history. Little Fatty was the only one who was still trying his best to restrain himself. However, he could not stop the smugness in his eyes. Cough, cough. Finally, Little Fatty coughed gently and waved it off pretentiously. It's better to keep a low profile for things like this. Just keep it to yourself and don't spread it. We're not the type of people who care about fame and fortune, Shi Jian chimed in. Yes, yes, yes. Lin Xuanji nodded hurriedly. Brothers, you're the most indifferent to fame and fortune among the people I know. You two brothers are also warm-hearted, righteous. Little Fatty and Shi Jian were invigorated and beamed when they heard that. They felt that this trip was nothing. Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes. He was about to vomit from all the talking that the two of them could take it. Chapter 1451. Demoness Ji led Yen Beichen out of the exquisite killing formation. Yen Beichen's heart was filled with resentment and rage the entire time. That resentment was vented with that slash, and a half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace was killed on the spot. Of course, the reason why the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace died was because he was no longer in his peak state after his battle with Su Zimo earlier on. Furthermore, his attention was focused on Su Zimo. How could he have expected such a terrifying slash to burst forth from below? The situation changed instantly with the appearance of Shura. Su Zimo alone was in a stalemate against 10 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace and a monster incarnate like Heavenly Secrets. Now, with the addition of Shura, who was filled with torrential hatred and murderous intent, Enigma Palace had lost a half-martial ancestor and the situation took a turn for the worse. I'll go help Ming Zhen. Demoness Ji knew very well that given her combat strength, it would be difficult for her to pose much of a threat to half-martial ancestors even if she helped Su Zimo. On the other side, Ming Zhen fought against more than 100 mighty figures of Enigma Palace alone and could not hold on any longer. Demoness Ji arrived on the battlefield with light steps and smiled at the surrounding mighty figures of Enigma Palace. Everyone, do you really want to be enemies with me? After cultivating the Pure Maiden Sutra, Demoness Ji exuded an indescribable and irresistible charm. Not to mention men, even if women saw her, they would unconsciously want to get close to her. She was truly bewitching and bewitching the world. On the other side, Yen Beichen no longer had anyone else in his eyes. He was completely immersed in his hatred and no longer cared about life or death. There was only a single thought in his mind: to kill Heavenly Secrets and take revenge for Qin Pianran. Yen Beichen's eyes were pitch black and were completely occupied by the hatred fiend Qi. Heavenly Secrets felt his hair stand on end as he looked at those pitch-black fiend eyes. This was Enigma Palace after all. Even Shura and Araki Takashi wouldn't be able to do anything. However, in the face of a lunatic like Shura, Tianji suddenly regretted his decision. To be precise, the Shura of this life was created by him. Yen Beichen walked 209 steps in the exquisite killing formation and was already covered in cuts and bruises. However, at that moment, he could not feel any pain. He soared into the sky and charged at Tianji with the hatred demon saber. Die, demon! Half-martial ancestor Shinjio roared and slapped his storage bag. A golden beam of light flew out and pounced towards Yen Beichen. This golden light was not an artifact, but a living creature. Su Zimo looked carefully. This was a type of bird, the divine dove. The divine dove was a pure-blooded ferocious beast. It was rumored that it possessed the bloodline of the three-legged golden crow, and when cultivated to its peak, it could even evolve into a true three-legged golden crow. However, the divine dove was extremely fast and had a strong bloodline. Its entire body burned with golden flames and it seemed like it was about to transform. Yen Beichen did not stop in his tracks, as though he did not see the divine dove at all. The other half-martial ancestors attacked as well. Although Yen Beichen was already deeply immersed in hatred and killing and could not extricate himself, he had absolute trust in Su Zimo. He knew that Su Zimo would definitely help him stop the others. Su Zimo moved. A pair of wings grew from Su Zimo's back and lightning flashed on his body. He released a golden beam and his speed reached an extreme. In fact, his movement technique was even faster than the divine dove's and he blocked it first. Reaching out, he grabbed the divine dove. The divine dove let out a long cry and its gaze was ferocious. The flames on its body burned brightly as it reached out with its sharp claws, wanting to tear Su Zimo's palm apart. "Beast, how dare you be insolent in front of me?" Su Zimo hollered, "I've even killed a true three-legged golden crow before, let alone the fact that you haven't transformed into a golden crow." In the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, Qinglian's true body had indeed killed the golden crow race. Against the divine dove's sharp claws, Su Zimo's palm had no intention of dodging at all and grabbed over. No matter how sharp the divine dove's claws were, they could not injure Qinglian's true body. In a flash, Su Zimo had already grabbed the divine dove in his palm and exerted strength. Groar! The divine dove let out a tragic cry and reared its head. It was way too small and was not even the size of Su Zimo's palm. There was no way it could withstand Su Zimo's burst of power. "Araki Takashi, how dare you!" Half-martial ancestor Shin Dove roared. All these years, the divine dove had accompanied him ever since he started cultivating. His Taoist name was Divine Dove. To him, the divine dove was more important than anything. However, he was facing Araki Takashi. Araki Takashi was not afraid of his threat at all. Su Zimo exerted strength in his palm and crushed the divine dove, causing blood to spray. Even its essence spirit could not escape and was killed by Su Zimo's palm. Although the divine dove was dead, the flames on its body did not extinguish and burned continuously on Su Zimo's palm. Araki Takashi, although the divine dove is dead, its flames will never be extinguished. The flames of the divine dove will burn you to ashes. Even if you're Qinglian's true body, it won't matter. Half-martial ancestor Shin Dove said coldly. "Not necessarily." Su Zimo sneered and conjured hand seals rapidly with his burning palm. Swoosh! Suddenly, 3 flames burned in Su Zimo's palm. Scarlet, Immortal Tao Fire. Gold, Buddhist Tao Fire. Black, Fiend Tao Fire. The 3 Tao fires burned and suppressed the flames of the divine dove in Su Zimo's palm instantly, devouring them without a trace. The attacks of the half-martial ancestors of Gantian Heaven and the others descended. Su Zimo's expression was cold, but his eyes seemed to be burning with 2 balls of flames. He threw out the 3 Tao fires in his hands and hollered, "Kachirati Tao Fire." Before he finished his sentence, a stream of essence spirit fire burst forth from Su Zimo's essence spirit and fused into the 3 Tao fires. The flames intensified and surged into the skies, enveloping the half-martial ancestors of Gantian Heaven and the others. The power of the Kachirati Tao fire was extremely great and could threaten half-martial ancestors. Back on 6-Star Mountain, the reason why the Kachirati Tao fire was easily suppressed was because it was not condensed enough. The power of the Kachirati Tao fire was scattered throughout 6-Star Mountain and naturally could not threaten conjoint body mighty figures and half-martial ancestors. However, it was different now. The Kachirati Tao fire's target was the 9 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace. A half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace wanted to take it head-on with his dermic art. To think that his dermic art would be burned into nothingness the moment it was released. Even his destiny dermic weapon dimmed when it entered the sea of flames. The half-martial ancestor expert realized that something was amiss and wanted to retreat. However, it was already too late. Sparks darted up and landed on his body. In the blink of an eye, he expanded against the wind and turned into a gigantic human-shaped fireball. The half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace struggled and roared in extreme pain. No matter how he channeled his bloodline dermic powers, the Kachurati Dao fire on his body could not be extinguished. The life force of a half-martial ancestor expert was way too exuberant. If it was an ordinary conjoint body mighty figure, they would have been burned to ashes in the blink of an eye. The fire on the body of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace lasted for more than 10 breaths before gradually extinguishing, leaving only ashes scattered in the void. Chapter 1452. The Kachurati Dao fire descended and another half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace was dead. The half-martial ancestors of Heaven and the others resisted with all their might within the Dao fire as well. All of them had terrible expressions and were drenched in sweat. On the other side, Yen Beichen and Heavenly Secrets were engaged in a battle. Under normal circumstances, Yen Beichen, who cultivated the Hatred Sutra and Shura Sutra, was even stronger than Heavenly Secrets. However, he was injured, and coupled with the fact that Heavenly Secrets had many methods, the two of them were in a stalemate and it was difficult to determine the victor within a short period of time. Su Zimo controlled the Kachurati Dao fire and his dermic powers were endless. Burn! In Su Zimo's consciousness, the creation lotus platform spun slowly and burst forth with rays of light that circled around the black-haired essence spirit, nourishing and replenishing its power. If not for the creation lotus platform, Su Zimo would not have been able to hold on long ago. The Kachurati Dao fire burned the heavens and trapped the remaining 8 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace within. The fire grew stronger and more vigorous. Everyone, I don't want to be enemies with Enigma Palace. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, as long as everyone stays quietly within the Dao fire, there won't be any danger. Su Zimo was not Yen Beichen after all. He could still maintain his composure. It was unknown if Heavenly Secrets was the one who did this or if it was the Lord of Enigma Palace. Su Zimo was on good terms with Lin Xuanji after all. Furthermore, he had interacted with an old man from Enigma Palace before and the old man did not seem like an evil person. As long as Lin Xuanji or the old man appeared, there should be an end to today's matter. Araki Takashi, you killed a half-martial ancestor of my sect and you want to stay out of this? Half-martial ancestor Heaven sneered. Half-martial ancestor Shinjio said coldly, that's right, Araki Takashi. You killed my spirit beast and barged into my palace. Today, you and Shura will die here. The two of you had better shut up. Su Zimo's gaze was cold as he said slowly, otherwise I'll send the two of you on your way first. Right then, a cold snort sounded from Enigma Palace that was filled with immense rage and might. Are you Araki Takashi? How awe-inspiring! How can my Enigma Palace allow you to behave so atrociously? Along with that holler, a figure rose slowly from Enigma Palace with a boundless might. His gaze was like a torch as he glared at Su Zimo. Palace Master! When half-martial ancestor Ganian and the others saw this figure, they were overjoyed and exclaimed. This was the current Palace Master of Enigma Palace, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. Araki Takashi, you're finished. Half-martial ancestor Shinjio glanced at Su Zimo with a mocking expression and said with a smile, the Palace Master was originally in seclusion, but now that he has been alerted by you, even a deity can't save you. Then I'll burn it first. Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and the Kachurati Dao fire surged towards half-martial ancestor Shinjio. Half-martial ancestor Ganian and the others hurriedly attacked and helped half-martial ancestor Shinjio defend against Su Zimo's attack. Right then, the Palace Master of Enigma Palace, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, took out a gigantic bow from his storage bag. It was jade green in color and resembled jade. The moment the jade bow was taken out, The dermic powers in the void seemed to be attracted by something and gradually shifted towards the jade bow. Su Zimo frowned slightly. The bow was extremely special and he seemed to have seen it in an ancient book. Suddenly, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe picked up the jade bow and pulled the bowstring. The bow was like a full moon. However, there was no arrow on the bowstring. While Su Zimo was confused, the dermic powers around half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe surged towards his fingertip as though they had gone berserk. In the blink of an eye, a dermic power arrow was formed on the bowstring of the jade bow. As for the dermic powers around half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, they had already been sucked dry by the jade bow. The moment the dermic power arrow was formed, Su Zimo's hairs stood on end. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe released his grip and the arrow tore through the air. It was not aimed at Su Zimo, but the ancient unique treasure, the mystic magnet mountain in midair. Boom! There was a deafening sound. It was deafening. The mystic magnet mountain that was thousands of feet tall was shot down from midair by the dermic power arrow. It shrank continuously and its light dimmed as it fell to the ground. The many dermic weapons that were initially attached to the mystic magnet mountain broke free one after another and returned to the control of the mighty figures of Enigma Palace. The mighty figures of Enigma Palace were invigorated. Without the restraint of the mystic magnet mountain, Ming Zhen and Demoness Ji's situation turned unfavorable. Zimo, watch out. That's one of the ancient unique treasures, the dermic dispersing bow. Right then, Demoness Ji's voice sounded. Su Zimo revealed a look of realization and finally recalled the origin of the bow. The dermic dispersing bow was one of the ancient unique treasures that was equally famous as the mystic magnet mountain. However, among the 7 ancient unique treasures, the dermic dispersing bow's attack was the best. More importantly, a single arrow from the dermic dispersing bow could destroy all Dharma. Any dermic art would be useless against the dermic dispersing bow. After shooting down the mystic magnet mountain, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe's gaze shifted to Su Zimo. You're next. Although half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe's voice was calm, it carried a supreme authority that was unquestionable. All of a sudden, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe drew his bow. Another dermic power arrow was formed on his bowstring and absorbed all the dermic powers in the surroundings. The arrow tore through the air and passed through the Kacharati Dao fire. A terrifying scene happened. Wherever the arrow passed, it absorbed the dermic powers in the surroundings wildly. Even the Kacharati Dao fire could not defend against it. The arrow was extremely fast and passed through the Kacharati Dao fire. Not only was its power not reduced, it was even pushed to its limits. However, the Kacharati Dao fire had already been extinguished. The dermic powers of the Dao fire were completely absorbed by the arrow of the dermic dispersing bow and naturally could not be burned. A single arrow destroyed the Kacharati Dao fire. Furthermore, the arrow absorbed the dermic powers of the Kacharati Dao fire and was even more terrifying. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Su Zimo. It was too fast. Even with the help of his spirit perception, Su Zimo could not react in time. The creation lotus platform was nourishing his essence spirit in his consciousness and he could not take it out in time. Su Zimo could only raise both hands and attempt to grab the arrow. Fu, you overestimate yourself, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe sneered when he saw that. Bang! In a flash, Su Zimo closed his palm and grabbed the dermic power arrow. However, the arrow was way too strong. Even Su Zimo could not grab it and could only try his best to negate some of the power of the arrow. The arrow pierced through his hands. Su Zimo's palm was cut by the arrow and was dripping with blood. Exclamation point. The arrow entered Su Zimo's chest. It pierced through his body and flew out of his back. A grade 7 Qinglian's true body was almost indestructible. However, it was pierced by a single arrow from the dermic dispersing bow. Under normal circumstances, the power of the dermic dispersing bow would not be able to reach this level. However, the reason why the dermic dispersing bow could become an ancient unique treasure was because the arrow could absorb dermic powers to strengthen itself. The arrow possessed such terrifying power because it had absorbed the dermic powers of the Kachurati Dao fire. Chapter 1453. A bloody hole appeared in Su Zimo's chest with blood gushing out like a fountain. "Zimo!" Demoness Ji exclaimed with deep worry in her beautiful eyes. Su Zimo stood in midair with a cold expression, as though he could not feel any pain. He merely looked at the palace master of Enigma Palace, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, who was not far away. Ever since Qinglian's true body transformed into a grade 7 creation Qinglian, she had never suffered such a severe injury. If it was anyone else, their life force would have been destroyed by that arrow through their chest. However, Su Zimo's Qinglian's true body was equivalent to a grade 7 creation Qinglian with a vigorous life force. Even after suffering such a severe injury, her life force surged and healed her wounds furiously. That spirit breaker bow was a little troublesome. Any dermic art released would be absorbed by the spirit breaker bow and turned into its power. However, Su Zimo believed that no matter how strong a dermic weapon was, there would definitely be a flaw. Right then, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he vaguely realized something. Interval. The spirit breaker bow was an ancient unique treasure and did not shoot out a true arrow, but an arrow of dermic power. In other words, activating the spirit breaker bow was equivalent to activating a dermic art once. If one wanted to activate the same dermic art a second time, there had to be a gap in time for the essence spirit to catch its breath. That logic was similar to how one had to retract their fist before they could release a second punch. In fact, some terrifying dermic arts had an even longer gap in time. After half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe shot down the mystic magnet mountain, he did not shoot a second arrow immediately. Instead, he waited for a moment before shooting the second arrow at Su Zimo. At that moment, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe did not attack immediately after shooting the second arrow. Although the gap was short, Su Zimo still noticed it. "Araki Takashi, you're quite capable to be able to withstand an arrow from the spirit breaker bow." Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe said indifferently, "However, this second arrow will take your life. I don't think you have a chance." Su Zimo's eyes glowed brightly. His finger touched the space between his eyebrows, and then he pressed his sword fingers together before pointing at half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe from afar. He shouted loudly, "Qinglian sword, slash." Streaks of green light gushed out. The 63 Qinglian seeds rapidly condensed into a long sword in midair and slashed towards half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. This was a killing technique that targeted the primordial spirit, one of Su Zimo's strongest trump cards. Among those of the same cultivation realm, Monk Daming was the only one who could withstand that killing skill without suffering any injuries. Half-ancestor Qing Zhe's expression changed slightly. He could naturally sense the terrifying sharpness of this Qinglian sword. Before it even approached, his essence spirit already felt a faint piercing pain. Mysterious heaven slash. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe did not dare to be careless and hurriedly condensed his spirit consciousness and released an essence spirit secret skill to defend against it. Lunatic. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian cursed, "This Araki Takashi is truly a lunatic." Generally speaking, at their level of cultivation, they would not use essence spirit secret skills easily. A fight between essence spirits was the most dangerous. Once their essence spirits were injured, they might never be able to advance to the Mahayana realm for the rest of their lives. There was an insurmountable chasm between the conjoint body realm and the Mahayana realm. Even with the half-martial ancestor realm as a buffer, it was still extremely difficult for one to truly advance to the Mahayana realm. Generally speaking, after cultivating to the half-martial ancestor realm, one would enter seclusion in the sect and work hard to comprehend heaven and earth, divine powers, and attempt to break through to the Mahayana realm. Therefore, it was rare to see half-martial ancestors in the cultivation world. If not for the fact that Su Zimo had appeared out of nowhere and was invincible among his peers such that conjoint body mighty figures could not suppress him, these half-martial ancestors would not have appeared at all. To think that Su Zimo would use an essence spirit secret skill up till this point of the battle. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and the others cursed angrily. However, They could not stand by idly as they hurriedly condensed their spirit consciousnesses and channeled their essence spirit secret skills. Essence spirit secret skills burst forth one after another and struck Su Zimo. In a flash, Su Zimo charged towards half-martial ancestor Qingzai. At the same time, he conjured a secret skill once more and tapped his glabella with his finger, withdrawing a spirit consciousness whip that shone with lightning arcs. Spirit vanquishing whip. Su Zimo swung his whip and struck an essence spirit secret skill, dispersing it on the spot and turning it into nothingness. Ugh! The expression of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace changed as he grunted. In his consciousness, his essence spirit suffered quite a bit of shock. The Thunder Emperor's essence spirit secret skill. Half-martial ancestor Li Heng had a grim expression and recognized it quickly. Su Zimo swung the spirit vanquishing whip and shattered 4 essence spirit secret skills in succession before it dissipated. He had just advanced to the conjoint body realm and was already at his limit to release such an attack with the Thunder Emperor's secret skill. There were only 4 essence spirit secret skills left of Enigma Palace's half-martial ancestors. Under normal circumstances, they should have been enough to kill Su Zimo. However, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and the others were nervous as they stared fixedly at Su Zimo. Unless they witnessed Su Zimo's death with their own eyes, they did not know what would happen next. True enough. The moment Su Zimo's spirit vanquishing whip shattered, a blazing golden light burst forth from his glabella and condensed into a mysterious rune in midair. That rune contained an incomparably sacred power that seemed like it could suppress everything and purify all evil. It was another essence spirit secret skill, the Rulai Dermic Seal. The rune collided with the 4 essence spirit secret skills of Enigma Palace's half-martial ancestors. It was silent, but it was filled with an extremely terrifying spirit consciousness fluctuation that spread in all directions like ripples. The void distorted as though it wanted to tear everything apart. The remaining 8 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace retreated with wary expressions. However, Su Zimo relied on the Creation Lotus platform to protect his essence spirit and passed through the ripples, arriving before half-martial ancestor Qingzai. At the same time, half-martial ancestor Qingzai's mystic heaven collided with Qinglian's sword as well. When the 2 powers collided, it was as though the world had frozen. There was a brief pause. Mystic heaven dissipated. Qinglian's sword scattered as well, turning into dim Qinglian seeds that returned to Su Zimo's consciousness. After Qinglian's sword dissipated, the Qinglian seeds returned to the Creation Lotus platform to be nourished for a period of time and would recover their life force before long. However, half-martial ancestor Qingzai's essence spirit was extremely shaken in this essence spirit clash. In fact, a fine wound appeared on his essence spirit. His essence spirit was injured. Although the wound on his essence spirit was fine, it was extremely difficult for it to recover completely and might require years of recuperation. If he could not recover completely, he would be stuck at the half-martial ancestor realm forever with no hope of advancing to the ancestor realm. Araki Takashi. Enraged, half-martial ancestor Qingzai raised the spirit breaker bow in his hands and was about to shoot a 3rd arrow. At this moment, his vision blurred, and a figure descended in front of him. The figure directly attacked, erupting with an incomparably tragic aura. Half-martial ancestor Qingzai had not expected that Su Zimo would have already arrived before him after the essence spirit clash. He did not even have time to release his spirit breaker bow. That was also a flaw of the spirit breaker bow. If someone got close to him, this ancient unique treasure would become a burden instead. Chapter 1454. Half-martial ancestor Qingzai channeled his blood qi and threw a punch in reverse toward Su Zimo's fist as well. Bang! The fists collided. In fact, Su Zimo and half-martial ancestor Qingzai could even hear the jarring sound of bones and flesh colliding. They were evenly matched. A tremendous recoil force burst forth. A look of mockery flashed through half-martial ancestor Qingzai's eyes. Making use of the recoil force, he retreated rapidly, wanting to distance himself from Su Zimo. All of a sudden, Half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's expression changed. After the two fists collided, Su Zimo suddenly turned his fist into a palm and turned soft, turning from extremely tough to extremely soft without any sluggishness. That soft palm was placed on half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's fist, curling and vibrating. An extremely terrifying power burst forth. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zai could clearly sense a heart-wrenching pain in his arm, as though it was being twisted and torn apart. Ah! Half-martial ancestor Qing Zai shrieked. The flesh on his arm exploded one after another, and his entire arm turned into a blood mist. Su Zimo strode forward and reached out with both hands. In a flash, he gripped half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's arms and bent his knees forward, slamming forward like a galloping horse. Although the killing technique of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness was not as strong as the dragon phoenix body, it was still exceptionally terrifying when used by Qinglian's true body. Sniffed. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's chest caved in deeply. Against the impact of the two powers, his arms were torn off by Su Zimo and blood gushed out like a fountain in an extremely tragic manner. Ah! Half-martial ancestor Qing Zai let out another cry of pain with a pale face. His armless body trembled in midair as though he was convulsing. This unforeseen event shocked all the experts present. Nobody expected half-martial ancestor Qing Zai to suppress Su Zimo with an incomparably domineering stance the moment he appeared and almost killed him. But in the blink of an eye, the situation was reversed. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zai was almost killed by Su Zimo in close combat. Despite being severely injured, half-martial ancestor Qing Zai was still able to stand in the air and madly channel his magic power. His two arms grew back at a speed visible to the naked eye. The broken bones in his chest were also rapidly healing. The sound of a tsunami could be heard coming from half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's body. Blood like a tide. To be able to oversee the Enigma Palace and become a palace master, combat strength was definitely not the most important thing. This was because the palace master was in charge of such a large sect and had to deal with many complicated matters. Managing the disciples would definitely consume a lot of energy. It was the same for the major sects and forces. However, to be able to become the palace lord of Enigma Palace, he was definitely not someone easy to deal with. Despite suffering such serious injuries, half-martial ancestor Qing Zai was still able to quickly calm down and heal his physical body with his powerful bloodline. From this, one could see how capable he was. Unfortunately, the situation was no longer under his control. Initially, half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's severed arm was nothing much. However, his severed arm was wielding the ancient unique treasure, Dharma Dispersing Bow. And now, the Spellbreaker Bow was in Su Zimo's hands. Shoot me with an arrow. Su Zimo looked at half-martial ancestor Qing Zai and said coldly, I'll return an arrow to you. Before he finished his sentence, Su Zimo pulled open the Dharma Dispersing Bow and a mysterious feeling appeared. The surrounding dermic powers gathered crazily at his fingertips. In the blink of an eye, a dermic power arrow appeared. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's expression changed starkly. Shoo! The bow was like a full moon and the arrow was like a shooting star. The dermic power arrow tore through the air at a shocking speed. As it passed through the void, it absorbed all the dermic power in the surroundings. The speed of the long arrow was getting faster and faster, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived. One could not defend against the arrow of the Dharma Dispersing Bow with dermic arts. Otherwise, it would only increase the power of the Dharma Dispersing Bow. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zai reacted extremely quickly. A gigantic ancient mirror floated out from his glabella and expanded rapidly in front of him. Boom! The dermic power arrow collided with the ancient mirror with a deafening bang. Crack, crack, crack. The ancient mirror shattered instantly. Countless shards flew backward and entered half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's body, almost turning him into a sieve with blood gushing out like a fountain. This time round, half-martial ancestor Qing Zai could no longer hold on and fell from midair. His face was pale and his eyes were dim. The crowd was shocked. When they saw that, the cultivators of Enigma Palace were in an uproar. Some of the low-level cultivators of Enigma Palace could not leave the palace due to their cultivation realms and could only watch the battle from within. However, the palace lord of Enigma Palace was shot down by Araki Takashi with a single arrow. This scene was way too shocking for them. A mighty figure of Enigma Palace hurriedly moved and helped half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe up from midair. Attack! Right then, Heavenly Secrets, who was fighting Shura, suddenly shouted, "The Dharma dispersing bow needs a gap and can't shoot continuously." Half-martial ancestors Qian Heaven and the others reacted and attacked one after another. Bang, bang, bang. One after another, powerful spells descended once again. That's good as well. I'll let you guys have a taste of the power of this Dharma dispersing bow. Su Zimo said coldly. Under countless gazes, he pulled the bowstring once more and Dharmic powers gathered rapidly, causing another Dharmic power arrow to appear. How is that possible? Even quasi-ancestor Qing Zhe cried out involuntarily when he saw this scene. The Dharma dispersing bow had just released an arrow. The second arrow was condensed in the blink of an eye. Shoo! The Dharmic power arrow tore through the air and pierced the Dharmic art of a half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace instantly. The Dharmic art dissipated on the spot and all the Dharmic powers were absorbed by the Dharmic power arrow. It was even faster and more ferocious. Exclamation point. The Dharmic power arrow pierced the chest of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace and exited his body. Not only did the terrifying power destroy the life force of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace, it even surged towards his consciousness. The half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace reacted extremely quickly and escaped with his essence spirit right away. Su Zimo ignored that person and turned around suddenly. He looked at another half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace with a lightning gaze and pulled the Dharma dispersing bow once more. In the blink of an eye, a third Dharmic power arrow was formed. How could this be? That's impossible. Pissed. Everyone from Enigma Palace gasped and their expressions changed in shock as panic finally flashed through their faces. In the hands of Su Zimo, that ancient unique treasure could be drawn continuously and condense Dharmic power arrows. This meant that their Dharmic arts were completely useless against Su Zimo. Shoo! The third arrow tore through the air and two Dharmic arts dissipated on the spot. A single arrow could destroy all Dharmic arts. Another half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace was pierced by the Dharmic power arrow and fell from midair with a grim expression. His essence spirit escaped from the top of his head. Boom! Before his body landed on the ground, it could not withstand the power of the Dharmic power arrow and exploded, causing flesh and blood to splatter everywhere. Thankfully, that person managed to escape first when he saw that the situation was amiss. Otherwise, his essence spirit would have been destroyed. Who else? Su Zimo stood in midair and roared. Under the fearful gazes of everyone from Enigma Palace, he pulled the Dharmic dispersing bow once more and condensed a fourth Dharmic power arrow. Shoo! Su Zimo released his grip and the arrow tore through the air. Another half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace was shot down. He was invincible. That was the only thought left in the minds of everyone from Enigma Palace. Chapter 1455. On the other side, the battle between Heavenly Secrets and Yen Beichen had reached a climax as well. It was as though every single move was lethal. Yen Beichen's injuries were even more severe. However, there was no emotion on his face and eyes. It was as though he could not feel any pain at all. His heart was filled to the brim with hatred. He only wanted Heavenly Secrets dead. He wanted Heavenly Secrets to pay with his life. Heavenly Secrets was in a bitter battle and the smile on his face had vanished completely. In this kind of battle, all of his schemes were useless. Yen Beichen did not care about his life at all. All of his attacks were exchanging lives for lives. Yen Beichen was not afraid of death. In fact, in his heart, as long as he could kill Heavenly Secrets, death would be a form of release for him. However, Heavenly Secrets did not want to die. Given the difference in mentality, Heavenly Secrets was suppressed by Yen Beichen once more. On the other side, Su Zimo had already seized control of the situation after seizing the spirit dispersing bow. From time to time, a strange blood glint would flash through Heavenly Secrets' eyes. Nobody noticed it. He could no longer control himself and wanted to channel the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. If he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, his combat strength would recover rapidly and he would definitely be able to kill Yen Baichen here. However, if he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, his identity would not be able to be concealed. Even in the hands of a half-martial ancestor, the spirit-dispersing bow, the ancient unique treasure, would take a while to conjure a second arrow. The reason why Su Zimo could draw the spirit-dispersing bow continuously and conjure dermic power arrows was because of the Creation Lotus platform in his consciousness. After Qinglian of Creation advanced to grade 7, she had already developed an extremely mysterious ability. The Creation Lotus platform guarded the consciousness and its 63 lotus holes spewed with light continuously, nourishing the black-haired essence spirit. As long as the essence spirit was strong enough, it could release dermic arts continuously. Previously, that was the reason why Su Zimo could release more than 30 powerful dermic arts in a single breath. The Spellbreaker Bow was an ancient treasure, but the arrow that he condensed was actually a kind of spell. With the help of the Grade 7 Lotus platform of creation, the power of the Spellbreaker Bow was unleashed to the extreme in Su Zimo's hands. There were still 5 half-martial ancestors from the Enigma Palace who possessed combat strength. Half-martial ancestor Ganin, half-martial ancestor Shinjio, and the others were among them. However, the 5 half-martial ancestors didn't dare to release any more spells. A single arrow from the Spellbreaker Bow could break all spells. Any spell would not be able to withstand a single blow from the Spellbreaker Bow. It would even turn into the power of the Spellbreaker Bow and hurt the caster. Fight him in close combat. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian groaned and exchanged glances with half-martial ancestor Shinjio. Both of them moved and executed an extremely strange movement technique. Their figures flickered and moved in different directions. As long as he could get close, the Spellbreaker Bow would not be a threat. If he wanted to shoot an arrow, he had to use his arms. Once everyone got close, the Spellbreaker Bow would definitely become a burden. The movement technique they released at that moment was extremely particular as well. It was a legacy secret skill of Enigma Palace, the Mystic Heaven Steps. Its power and profoundness were second only to the exquisite steps. Back in the Dao Inheritance Ground, Yin chased after Lin Xuanji for a long time but could not do anything to him. The Mystic Heaven Steps was the reason why. The Mystic Heaven Steps moved randomly without a fixed pace, making it impossible for the opponent to determine the direction of the footsteps, and their movements were erratic. The 5 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace executed the Mystic Heaven Steps and charged toward Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not put away the Spellbreaker Bow. Instead, he closed his eyes and used his unfathomable spirit perception to capture the positions of the 5 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace. Although the footsteps of the 5 half-martial ancestors were unpredictable, the killing intent on their bodies did not change at all. All of a sudden, without even opening his eyes, Su Zimo drew the Spellbreaker Bow and condensed a 5th dermic power arrow before releasing it without hesitation. The dermic power arrow tore through the air. The arrow was shot towards half-martial ancestor Shinjio. Half-martial ancestor Shinjio was shocked. The arrow arrived at the same time as he landed. By the time he wanted to change directions, it was already too late. Half-martial ancestor Shinjio hurriedly swung the horsetail whisk in his hands and whipped it towards the dermic power arrow. Bang! There was a deafening sound. The silver threads on half-martial ancestor Shinjio's horsetail whisk exploded instantly. The power of the arrow did not weaken as it pierced through the silver threads of the horsetail whisk and pierced towards the chest of half-martial ancestor Shinjio. In a hurry, half-martial ancestor Shinjio raised his arm. Exclamation point! Half-martial ancestor Shinjio's arms exploded on the spot and flesh splattered everywhere. Ah! Half-martial ancestor Shinjio cried out in pain and retreated. Before the 4 half-martial ancestors of Qian Heaven could get close to Su Zimo, their expressions turned extremely terrible and they froze on the spot. Turning around, Su Zimo drew his bow and shot another arrow. The 6th arrow. The half-martial ancestor of Qian Heaven struggled to use his dermic weapon to block the arrow. However, he spat out a mouthful of blood with a dispirited expression. Retreat! The remaining 3 half-martial ancestors did not dare to advance and retreated one after another. We can't win! We can't win! Half-martial ancestor Li Heng shouted as he retreated. Enigma Palace's palatial lord, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, swallowed many elixirs and rested for a while with the support of a mighty figure of Enigma Palace. He had already recovered a little. When he saw everything on the battlefield, the palatial lord of Enigma Palace looked furious, helpless, and lonely. No matter the outcome of this battle, Enigma Palace's reputation and status would be far inferior to before. Who would have thought that Enigma Palace had a legacy that spanned through history and had never been challenged by any sect or faction since the ancient era? However, in this lifetime, 4 conjoint body mighty figures came knocking on their doors and beat them to such an extent. Actually, Enigma Palace could not be blamed. Right now, the 4 of them could be considered as the 4 strongest monster incarnates of the conjoint body realm. Be it Mingzhen, Demoness Ji, or Shura Yen Beichen, every single one of them was an existence that could sweep through their peers. Furthermore, the exquisite killing formation that could trap and kill the Patriarch outside Enigma Palace was coincidentally destroyed by Demoness Ji. That was the reason why Enigma Palace was in such a passive state. It was not only Enigma Palace. Even if the Patriarch of the other super sects did not appear, the combat strength of the 4 of them would be able to slaughter their way through the super sects as well. Palace Lord, send the order. The mighty figure of Enigma Palace said in a deep voice, if this continues, the sect will suffer too great of a loss. That's right. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe nodded as well and lamented, Araki Takashi is already established. If the Patriarch doesn't appear, there's no one left who can suppress him. Elder Qing Zhe took a deep breath of air and turned around. He bowed deeply in the direction of Enigma Palace and said in a deep voice, Divine Dragon, please take action and suppress the external enemies. There was a long silence. All of a sudden, a deafening bang sounded from around Enigma Palace. Instantly, the mountains collapsed and the ground cracked. Under countless gazes, the terrain around Enigma Palace actually rose slowly as a terrifying aura spread out. A divine dragon that was 1,000 feet long revealed its true form and coiled around Enigma Palace slowly. Its gigantic dragon eyes resembled 2 ancient stars. The scales on its body were even larger than the city gates and shone with a cold glint. The gigantic dragon head swayed slightly and shook off endless dust. Opening its mouth slightly, it spat out a mouthful of dragon breath and bared its menacing fangs. Chapter 1456. The divine dragon's aura was way too strong. Su Zimo did not feel such pressure even from Long Ran and the others. Of course, the main reason was because Long Ran had never transformed into his true form in front of Su Zimo. However, the divine dragon before him was in its complete form. Su Zimo could not tell the divine dragon's cultivation. However, he guessed that it was at the ancestor realm at the very least. He did not know how long the divine dragon had lived. 50,000 years? 100,000 years? Or even longer? Dragons had long lifespans that far surpassed humans. It was normal for ancestor realm divine dragons to live for hundreds of thousands of years. The divine dragon exuded an ancient aura and its whiskers were extremely long. They drooped down from its chin like the Milky Way and looked old. However, the moment this old dragon appeared, the entire world went silent. The old dragon's 1,000 feet tall body broke free from the mud slowly and spiraled upwards. Its gaze was like a torch as it glared at the cultivators in front of Enigma Palace. That gaze was as though it was looking at a bunch of ants. Or rather, if the old dragon exhaled, all the cultivators in front of Enigma Palace might turn into ashes. Silence reigned. Even Shura Yen Beichen had no choice but to stop against the pressure of the old dragon. His body trembled slightly as he withstood the immense might of the old dragon. Who would have thought that there would be an ancestor realm divine dragon slumbering around Enigma Palace? The mystical guardian beast of Enigma Palace. That was the foundation of Enigma Palace. The exquisite killing formation was only the first line of defense. The second line of defense was the old dragon at the ancestor realm. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled the scene of him encountering Lin Xuanji in the Dragon Bone Valley of the North region. Now that he thought about it, it was not a coincidence that Lin Xuanji came to the Dragon Bone Valley. One of Su Zimo's true bodies was among the dragons. He knew the temperament of dragons the best. Dragons were prideful. He wondered what kind of incredible figure had appeared in the Enigma Palace back then to make an ancestor realm divine dragon willingly guard this place. If the true body of the dragon phoenix was here, the current situation would be nothing. Even if this old dragon belonged to the Enigma Palace, he was still a dragon after all. He would never harm the forbidden dragon phoenix. However, Qinglian's true body was different. In the eyes of the progenitor realm old dragon, Qinglian's true body was no different from other ants. "Why did you wake me up?" The old dragon's voice rang out and spread to every corner of the Sky Evolution mountain range. It contained boundless pressure that shook one's mind. "Senior Divine Dragon, the sect has encountered a great enemy. I implore Senior Divine Dragon to take action and kill these 4 people." Half-Martial Ancestor Qingze was also very respectful and extremely courteous towards this divine dragon. After bowing, he spoke in a deep voice. "Umph." The old dragon snorted coldly, and the entire world trembled. Enigma Palace is truly getting weaker and weaker. To think that 4 conjoint body brats would come knocking on their doors and they would be beaten so badly that they could not retaliate at all. As the old dragon said that, he reached out with his dragon claw and grabbed towards Su Zimo's group of 4 slowly. The dragon claw covered the skies and its sharp claws were aimed at the heads of Su Zimo's group of 4 without any mistake. The most frightening thing was that Su Zimo's group of 4 could not move at all under the envelopment of the dragon claw, as though they were restrained by an invisible force. This old dragon was way too strong. Having lived to this age, he had seen countless vicissitudes of life on Tianhuang mainland and experienced countless bloodbaths. Killing Su Zimo's group of 4 was as easy as crushing 4 ants for him. In midair, Yan Beichen's eyes were filled with endless hatred. He was indignant. A smile appeared on Heavenly Secrets' face once more. The angrier Yan Beichen was, the deeper the smile in his eyes. "Shura, you've lost." Heavenly Secrets smiled gently and gestured for him to be beheaded. "Heavenly Secrets?" Yan Beichen's expression was enraged and his body trembled. The hatred fiend saber buzzed and trembled, but he could not break free from the restraining power on his body no matter what. All of a sudden, the dragon claw paused in midair and did not descend. A look of confusion flashed through the old dragon's eyes as he frowned slightly and hesitated. Thereafter, right in front of half-martial ancestor Qingze and the others, the old dragon retracted his dragon claw slowly. The restraints on Su Zimo's group of 4 dissipated as well. Su Zimo muttered in his heart as well. He didn't know what had happened in this short period of time to make this old dragon change his mind. "Divine Dragon, what's wrong?" Half-martial ancestor Qingze said hurriedly. The 4 of them barged into Enigma Palace and destroyed the stone steel of the sect. They killed several mighty figures of Enigma Palace and severely injured many half-martial ancestors. "Divine Dragon, please take action and kill the 4 of them." "I won't interfere in this matter anymore," the old dragon said without any reason and returned to the ground. It closed its dragon eyes and went into hibernation, not moving at all. "Divine Dragon, how can you do this?" Half-martial ancestor Qingze was anxious and his tone was resentful. The old dragon did not even open his eyes and said indifferently, "If you say anything more to me, I'll devour you first." Half-martial ancestor Qingze was shocked. Although the old dragon was the mystical guardian beast of Enigma Palace, he was not restricted by the sect rules. If the old dragon were to devour him alive, there was nothing he could do. Since the palace lord of Enigma Palace did not understand what was going on, everyone else was even more confused. Heavenly Secrets was the only one who frowned slightly in deep thought. Sprawled on the ground, the old dragon suddenly shook his head and 2 long streams of air puffed out from his nostrils, blowing up endless dust. Nobody noticed that there were 3 wretched figures hiding in the hair on the old dragon's neck, and they were nearly thrown down. The 3 figures were not even as thick as the old dragon's beard, and no one would notice them if they hid within. The 3 of them were Lin Xuanji, Little Fatty, and Shijian, who had escaped from the depths of the ground. "Thank you, Senior Divine Dragon," Lin Xuanji whispered. The old dragon harumphed in response. The reason why the old dragon stopped in time was because of Lin Xuanji's persuasion. In Enigma Palace, there were less than 10 cultivators who knew the old dragon, and Lin Xuanji was one of them. "Lin Xuanji, you're really something." Little Fatty hid in the old dragon's beard and was nearly scared to death earlier on. Now that he snapped out of his stupor, he could not help but say, "Let the divine dragon attack and kill that dog *T Heavenly Secrets." Heavenly Secrets is always smiling. I can tell that he's up to no good with a single glance. *CK your head, Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes. The fact that Senior Divine Dragon did not interfere is already giving me face. How can he attack someone from Enigma Palace? It's fine if it's just Heavenly Secrets. However, I suspect that there are others involved. Lin Xuanji's gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shinjiu of Enigma Palace as he murmured softly. "Given the current situation, we've got to invite the old man back. Otherwise, Brother Su and the others will all die here." Lin Xuanji muttered again. Chapter 1457. What's going on? Is Araki Takashi truly a person of great fortune and is shrouded in auspicious signs? That's right. Araki Takashi fought in front of Enigma Palace and injured so many experts of the sect. Yet, even the mystical guardian beast did not kill him? When the cultivators of Enigma Palace saw that, they began to discuss and their hearts wavered. "Palace Lord, let's invite the patriarch back." Half-martial ancestor Li Heng sent a voice transmission with a grim expression. "That's the only way." Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe nodded. Clang, clang. On the other side, the moment Yen Beichen escaped, he dragged the Hatred Fiend saber and charged towards Heavenly Secrets. Heavenly Secrets was the only one in his eyes. Heavenly Secrets had a calm expression and did not take Yen Beichen head-on. Instead, he executed the mystic heaven steps and retreated. At the same time, Su Zimo drew his spirit-dispersing bow once more and conjured a dermic power arrow that tore through the air, sealing Heavenly Secrets' path of retreat instantly. Heavenly Secrets' expression finally changed. Even if he had heaven-defying methods, he would not be able to defend against the combined forces of Araki Takashi and Shura, the 2 strongest monster incarnates of the current era. Although Heavenly Secrets' footwork was mysterious, his shoulder was still pierced by the dermic power arrow and his entire arm exploded into a blood mist. Shura slashed down with his saber. Heavenly Secrets dodged with all his might, but the Hatred Fiend saber still left a bloody wound on his chest. His flesh was ripped apart and his bones could be seen. Ugh! Heavenly Secrets grit his teeth and grunted dully, breaking out in cold sweat from the pain. Heavenly Secrets channeled dermic powers and his severed arm grew back in the blink of an eye. However, the wound on his chest was still bleeding profusely. The Hatred Fiend saber contained an extremely terrifying Hatred Fiend chi, and even the smallest wound was extremely difficult to heal. Heavenly Secrets' blood chi was drained severely. He retreated continuously with a scarlet glint in his eyes. He could no longer hold it in. Kill! Right at this moment, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shinjiu charged forward once more. One stood in front of Shura while the other charged towards Su Zimo. Shura slashed back. Hatred Fiendish Energy and Shura Fiendish Energy instantly erupted, slashing half-ancestor Shinjiu flying. Half-martial ancestor Shinjiu spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was dispirited and a trace of blood light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Clang! Su Zimo drew his spellbreaker bow and fired another arrow. The arrow was blocked by the half-martial ancestor's magic weapon, but it couldn't block the terrifying power contained within the arrow. The half-martial ancestor of Qian Heaven felt as though he was struck by lightning and lost his grip on his dermic weapon. The flesh on his arms exploded and his body swayed, almost falling from midair. Two quasi-ancestors were utterly unable to resist the attacks of Su Zimo and Yen Beichen. In the blink of an eye, Heaven's secret was once again exposed to Su Zimo and Yen Beichen. A blood glint gradually appeared in Heaven's eyes and could no longer be concealed. If he did not use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he might die here. When he saw that, Su Zimo's expression was cold as he drew his spellbreaker bow once more. He wanted to force Heaven's secret to use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and let all the cultivators of Enigma Palace witness Heaven's true appearance with their own eyes. Buzz. The bowstring vibrated. A dermic power arrow tore through the air and arrived before Heaven's secret in the blink of an eye. Heaven's secret's eyes shone with a blood light. All of a sudden, as though he sensed something, the blood light in Heaven's secret's eyes faded rapidly. "How dare you!" A dignified roar sounded. Immediately after, a gigantic crack appeared in the void beside Heaven's secret. It was dark and cold as a palm reached out from within and grabbed the dermic power arrow. Bang! This invincible magical power arrow was actually crushed by a hand made of flesh and blood. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Right then, a figure walked out slowly from the gigantic crack. He had a skinny face and a slender figure. Dressed in Taoist robes, he strode out with his hands behind his back. It wasn't until this person walked out of the crack that the pitch-black crack gradually closed. That method definitely surpassed the power of the conjoint body realm or even the half-martial ancestor realm. A Mahayana patriarch. The reason why the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries were known as super sects was not only because of their ancient legacies and strong foundations. More than that, it was because there were Mahayana patriarchs presiding over those sects and there was more than one of them. In fact, there were even emperors in some super sects. However, those Mahayana patriarchs would almost never show themselves and rarely move about in the cultivation world. Even if something major happened in the sect, the Mahayana patriarchs would not appear. In the eyes of Mahayana patriarchs, there was only one thing that was important: becoming an emperor. Everything else was insignificant. Furthermore, at the Mahayana realm, most things in the cultivation world were indifferent to them and they would not take them to heart. The birth of paragons or monster incarnates was nothing in the eyes of Mahayana patriarchs. Throughout history, there were too many cultivators who became paragons and monster incarnates. However, there were extremely few who truly entered the Mahayana realm. Only those who entered the Mahayana realm were qualified to talk to them side by side. Therefore, unless the sect encountered a calamity or was in danger of being destroyed, the Mahayana patriarch would only come out of seclusion. Initially, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe thought that he could suppress Su Zimo and the others with his own methods. However, he did not expect the situation to develop to this extent. Left with no choice, he could only send a message and invite the sect's patriarch back. "Greetings, Patriarch Qing Cheng." Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the others bowed and shouted when they saw the skinny Taoist priest. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe was the descendant of Patriarch Qing Cheng. Although the two of them were only a single cultivation realm apart, Patriarch Qing Cheng was countless generations older than half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. The patriarch has appeared. That's a Mahayana patriarch. I've never seen him before after joining Enigma Palace. The cultivators of Enigma Palace were shocked. What's going on? Patriarch Qing Cheng surveyed his surroundings and swept past the battlefield. A cold glint flashed through his eyes as he asked slowly. "Patriarch," half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe said hurriedly. Araki Takashi and the others charged into Enigma Palace and declared that they wanted to kill our young master. Furthermore, they destroyed the stone stele of our sect and killed several mighty figures of Enigma Palace, severely injuring many half-martial ancestors. That Araki Takashi is lawless and even snatched away my dermic dispersal bow. The gaze of half-martial ancestor Qing Cheng shifted slowly and paused for a moment on demonist Ji, Ming Zhen and Yen Beichen before finally landing on Su Zimo. Su Zimo's hair stood on end. It was as though a calamity was about to befall him the next moment. This was a Mahayana patriarch who had comprehended divine powers. He was worlds apart from a half-martial ancestor who had comprehended a single divine power. If Patriarch Qing Cheng wanted to kill him, even Qinglian's true body would not be able to defend against it. "You've got guts to kill someone in Enigma Palace," Patriarch Qing Cheng said slowly, expressionlessly. "There's another reason for this." Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and endured the might of the patriarch, saying in a deep voice, "We're not here to make an enemy out of Enigma Palace." I don't want to hear your explanation." Patriarch Qing Cheng shook his head and said indifferently, "All of you, kill yourselves." Chapter 1458. The words of a Mahayana patriarch carried an unquestionable power. It was as though asking Su Zimo and the others to commit suicide was giving them a dignified death. To be fair, Patriarch Qing Cheng could not be bothered to make a move. Even if those people were monster incarnates in history, they were nothing more than ants in his eyes. Commit suicide? Su Zimo laughed. To think that a Mahayana patriarch of Enigma Palace would be so oblivious to right and wrong as well. Against the Mahayana patriarch, Su Zimo did not back down at all and revealed his sharpness. Su Zimo's gaze was cold as he said slowly, "If I, Araki Takashi, commit suicide here today, I'll definitely make a comeback in the future. At that time, let's see if anyone in Enigma Palace can stop me." That was not a threat. Even if Qinglian's true body died here, he still had two true bodies. The dragon's true body had the backing of dragons and divine Phoenix Island. By the time Su Zimo made a comeback, Enigma Palace might not be able to defend against him. Patriarch Araki Takashi has a clone with the dragons and has an extremely high status. He should be the young master of the dragons, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe said hurriedly. "Oh." Patriarch Qing Cheng frowned. That was a little troublesome. Even if Su Zimo was backed by other super sects, Patriarch Qing Cheng had no qualms about killing him. However, if it was one of the primordial races, the dragons, he would have to reconsider. After a moment of silence, Patriarch Qing Cheng said indifferently, "I can let you go. However, the three of them will still have to die. I don't care what super sect you guys are from. Since you're fighting in front of Enigma Palace, you have to be punished." Patriarch Qing Cheng had long seen through the cultivation technique inheritances of Yan Beichen, Ming Zhen and Demoness Ji and naturally knew where they came from. However, he had to kill to establish his dominance today. Otherwise, Enigma Palace's dignity would be gone. "You can't kill the three of them." Su Zimo didn't budge an inch as he stared at Patriarch Qing Cheng and said in a deep voice. In just a short while, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe had secretly transmitted a lot of information about Araki Takashi to Patriarch Qing Cheng. "Araki Takashi, don't push your luck." Old ancestor Qing Cheng sneered, "If I don't kill you, you won't live for long. You'll suffer the killing orders of the various primordial races. Why aren't the three of you killing yourselves? Are you waiting for me to do it myself?" Old ancestor Qing Cheng no longer paid attention to Su Zimo. His eyes fell on Yan Beichen and the other two. Yan Beichen's expression was cold. He channeled all the energy in his body and held the Lihen Fiend saber horizontally in front of his chest. Looking at Patriarch Qing Cheng, his entire body emitted a monstrous demonic aura. Anyone who tried to stop him from killing Tianji would be his enemy. Even against a Mahayana patriarch, Yan Beichen dared to draw his saber. However, against the power of a Mahayana patriarch, even the simple act of raising the Lihen Fiend saber seemed to have exhausted all his strength, let alone a battle against Patriarch Qing Cheng. "Fu." Patriarch Qing Cheng smiled indifferently. "The monster incarnate of this generation sure has some guts. To think that you would dare to draw your saber in front of me. That's good as well. I'll send you down Acheron and let you meet the fiend Emperor Lihen." Patriarch Qing Cheng's eyes shone brightly as he suddenly reached out and grabbed Yan Beichen. "Ah!" When he saw that, Su Zimo reared his head and roared into the skies. Channeling his blood chi to its limits, he broke free from the might of the Mahayana patriarch and drew his dermic power arrow once more, aiming at Patriarch Qing Cheng. Yen Beichen was extremely important to Su Zimo. He had once watched helplessly as Su Hong left him. Yet there was nothing he could do. He would never allow such a scene to happen in front of him again. Shoo! The dermic power arrow tore through the air and shot towards Patriarch Qingqing, arriving instantly. The crowd was shocked. Araki Takashi was way too gutsy. Yen Beichen cultivated the Hatred Sutra and was unable to extricate himself from hatred. Even though he had lost his rationality, he merely brandished his saber in front of Patriarch Qingqing. Araki Takashi dared to attack a Mahayana patriarch. The dermic power arrow was extremely fast. Even Patriarch Qingqing didn't seem to be able to react in time. He didn't dodge or block the attack. Patriarch Qingqing merely turned his head slowly and glanced at the dermic power arrow. Boom! The dermic power arrow exploded instantly and dissipated into nothingness, vanishing. With a single glance, the indestructible dermic power arrow exploded. That was the means of a Mahayana patriarch. That was the power of the Mahayana realm. It was a complete suppression. Patriarch Qingqing's expression darkened as he glared at Su Zimo coldly. Araki Takashi, you must be tired of living. Do you really think that I won't dare to kill you for being disrespectful to me? Su Zimo's arrow diverted Patriarch Qingqing's attention and hatred completely onto him as a massive pressure enveloped him. Under this pressure, the Green Lotus true body let out a series of creaking sounds, and all the bones in its body were about to fall apart. Brother Yen, hurry and leave. Su Zimo was expressionless. However, he sent a voice transmission secretly with his spirit consciousness and said anxiously, "Don't bother about me. My true body is elsewhere and I won't die." Fufu. Patriarch Qingqing's laughter was filled with mockery. None of you can leave today. Patriarch Qingqing looked at Su Zimo mockingly. Patriarch Qingqing could even hear Su Zimo's voice transmission. You have dragons backing you so I can spare your life. However, I'll have to teach you a lesson. Patriarch Qingqing looked at Su Zimo and said indifferently, your cultivation will be crippled today. Before he finished speaking, Patriarch Qingqing patted Su Zimo across the void. Swoosh. Although the action was casual, a terrifying giant palm instantly condensed in midair and pressed down on Su Zimo. Before the giant palm truly descended, Su Zimo's body was trembling constantly. Under the immense pressure, his 7 orifices began to bleed. If he were to cripple Qinglian's cultivation, it would be no different from killing him. All of a sudden, without warning, a figure appeared in front of Su Zimo. It was an old man with a Confucian crown and long robes. He had 3 strands of beard on his face and did not have the aura of an immortal. Instead, he looked like an ordinary person who wandered the mortal world. Who wants to cripple his cultivation? The old man harumphed softly and asked instead. With that single harumph, the terrifying palm in midair dissipated and vanished in the blink of an eye. Old storyteller. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he saw the old man. Although it was only a back view, he recognized him immediately. This old man was none other than Enigma Palace's old storyteller who forced a divine dragon to retreat outside the capital of Great Zhou. The moment the old storyteller appeared, 3 figures jumped out of the divine dragon that was hibernating beside him and shouted, "Old man, you're finally back. I missed you so much." After an unknown period of time, Lin Xuanji sprinted over with reddened eyes and tears streaming down his face. Little Fatty and Shijian followed behind and ran over as well. Chapter 1459. Lin Xuanji's cries were earth-shattering, and those who did not know would think that something had happened. The old storyteller's face darkened. The moment Lin Xuanji arrived before him, he raised his leg and kicked the ladder back. That action did not have the demeanor of an expert at all. Instead, it was more like a fight between mortals in the marketplace. However, it was not out of place for the old storyteller. Both Fatty and Shijian were startled by the kick. Screech! Lin Xuanji staggered from the kick and almost fell from midair. He could not help but grumble, "Old man, why did you kick me? Don't pretend with me." The old storyteller pursed his lips. He had already seen through Lin Xuanji's clumsy acting. With an embarrassed expression, Lin Xuanji wiped away the water droplets on his face and coughed gently. Although these tears are fake, my longing is truly touching. Humph. The old storyteller scoffed coldly and glanced at Lin Xuanji from the corner of his eyes, saying in disdain, "Look at how wretched you are. I don't even need to divine and use my but to know that you were plotted against." Little Fatty and Shijian were stunned and dumbfounded at the sight. This old man truly has no filter and is even more ridiculous than Lin Xuanji. How can he compare his head to his but? This is the helper that Lin Xuanji found? Why doesn't he look like an expert? The two of them exchanged glances and muttered internally. "Look at how useless you are." The old storyteller did not seem like he was going to let it go as he scolded, "You must have forgotten everything I taught you. All you know is to ask me to come back and clean up after you were bullied. I'm embarrassed for you." No matter how thick-skinned Lin Xuanji was, he could not withstand the old storyteller's scolding and his face flushed red. "Old man, don't say any more." The veins on Lin Xuanji's neck were popping as he could not help but argue, "I was imprisoned for a few years and had no intention of asking you for help. If not for the fact that this matter is too serious, I wouldn't have asked you to come back." "Io, you're still being stubborn." The old storyteller did not seem to have heard what Lin Xuanji was talking about. Instead, he mocked, "You're such a king embarrassment. To think that you were imprisoned for so many years." Crack. Lin Xuanji was humiliated as his face alternated between purple and green, wishing he could find a hole to hide in. None of the cultivators present dared to interrupt. Although this old man didn't seem serious at all. However, everyone could clearly see that the moment this old man appeared, he simply snorted and blocked the attack of Patriarch Qingqing. Moreover, this old man was full of nonsense, but elder ancestor Qingqing didn't say anything. Naturally, they wouldn't be so stupid to jump out. Originally, the situation in front of Enigma Palace was still a state of mutual hostility. After the old storyteller appeared, the atmosphere eased up quite a bit. The old storyteller kept scolding Lin Xuanji with different phrases. Lin Xuanji's face darkened as he shuddered in anger. He didn't even dare to talk back now. If he tried to argue, the old man would follow up with 10 sentences. Demoness Ji covered her mouth and snickered at the side. She truly could not stand it any longer and said with a smile, "Senior, there are so many people watching. You have to leave him some face." Her words were also a reminder for the old storyteller to deal with the situation before him. The old storyteller harumphed and said reluctantly, "Since ancestral Master Linglong's successor has pleaded for mercy, I'll let you off for now." "Oh my benefactor." Lin Xuanji felt as though he had been pardoned. This time round, he was truly moved to tears as tears streamed down his face. He wished he could run to Demoness Ji and kowtow. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief as well. In just this short period of time, his head was already faintly aching. "I'm Araki Takashi. Greetings, senior." Su Zimo hurried before the old storyteller and bowed. "Fufu, we meet again." Earlier on, the old storyteller looked at Lin Xuanji with a look of disdain. However, in the blink of an eye, his expression changed and he nodded to Su Zimo with a pleasant expression. Lin Xuanji gripped his fists tightly and gritted his teeth in hatred. The old storyteller's attitude toward Su Zimo caused everyone from Enigma Palace to shudder. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shinjiu's expressions turned terrible as they looked at Heavenly Secrets at the side instinctively. Heavenly Secrets was expressionless and did not say anything. Right then, Patriarch Qingqing stepped forward and bowed to the old storyteller, causing an uproar. Even the cultivators of Enigma Palace did not know of the old storyteller's identity, let alone outsiders. But now, even Patriarch Qingqing had to bow. Who was this old storyteller? Or rather, what was his cultivation realm? Could he be an emperor? Su Zimo was secretly shocked as well. He had met the old storyteller twice, but to think that the old man had such a powerful background. "Greetings." The moment Patriarch Qingqing opened his mouth, the old storyteller waved it off and interrupted, "Get up." The old storyteller looked at Lin Xuanji with disdain and was amiable towards Su Zimo. Now that he turned around and faced Patriarch Qing Cheng, his expression changed. "Were you the one who wanted to cripple his cultivation?" the old storyteller asked indifferently with a calm tone that could not be read. Yes, Patriarch Qing Cheng was clearly reserved in front of the old storyteller and no longer had the domineering might he had just now. He said in a deep voice, "That Araki Takashi fought in front of Enigma Palace? You know that he's Araki Takashi?" Before Patriarch Qing Cheng could finish, he was interrupted by the old storyteller's question. The Qingcheng Patriarch had been interrupted twice in a row, but there wasn't the slightest hint of displeasure on his face. "I know," old ancestor Qingcheng answered honestly. "I don't care what Araki Takashi did in front of Enigma Palace," the old storyteller said slowly. "He once founded the Wu Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings so that everyone in the world could cultivate and benefit the world. Aren't you afraid of the wrath of the heavens for crippling someone with such merit?" The old storyteller's tone turned harsher and towards the end, it was already berating. Patriarch Qing Cheng lowered his head slightly with a terrible expression. He was different from Lin Xuanji. After all, he was a Mahayana patriarch and it was truly embarrassing for him to be reprimanded in public. Actually, you can't blame Patriarch Qing Cheng, the palace lord of Enigma Palace could not help but say, "It's truly because Araki Takashi and the others have gone too far." They barged into the sect of Enigma Palace and shattered the stone stele with the words of the human emperor on it. They killed several mighty figures and injured many half-martial ancestors. They even threatened to kill the young master of Enigma Palace. If Patriarch Qing Cheng did not make a move and allowed Araki Takashi and the others to charge into Enigma Palace, given their temperaments, they would have gone on a killing spree. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian added hurriedly, "Palace Lord, you're right. Patriarch Qing Cheng has already given Araki Takashi a chance to retreat. However, he still went overboard. The Patriarch had no choice but to cripple his cultivation." "Nonsense. We're not here to make an enemy out of Enigma Palace. We're only here to settle scores with Heavenly Secrets," Demonist Ji hollered. "Heavenly Secrets is the young master of Enigma Palace. How can he be provoked by you?" Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe sneered. "Young master of Enigma Palace?" The old storyteller raised his brow and shifted his gaze slowly towards Heavenly Secrets, asking coldly, "When did you become the young master of Enigma Palace?" Chapter 1460. With a calm expression, Heavenly Secrets bowed respectfully and said in a deep voice, "Master, a few years ago, the Protoss, which race and a few other primordial races approached me and asked me to deduce the whereabouts of the primordial taboo." Su Zimo frowned slightly when he heard that. To think that Heavenly Secrets was the old storyteller's disciple. Heavenly Secrets, Xuanji. In that case, the two of them should be fellow disciples. Heavenly Secrets continued, "I was worried that the taboo would grow and wreak havoc in Tianhuang mainland. Therefore, I agreed to help and deduce its whereabouts. However, I was stopped by Junior Brother Xuanji. Junior Brother Xuanji is on good terms with Araki Takashi and the primordial taboo is Araki Takashi's spirit beast. I can understand why Junior Brother Xuanji wanted to stop me. However, Enigma Palace cares about all living beings in the world and cannot prioritize personal matters. Therefore, I reported this matter to the Palace Lord and the elders for them to make a decision." When he heard that, Lin Xuanji could not help but scoff and mock. The primordial races were the ones who wreaked havoc in Tianhuang mainland back then. Why are you still working with them and not killing them? Junior brother, I know that you're resentful. However, you can't blame me for imprisoning you. Heavenly Secrets said indifferently with a calm expression. At that moment, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe coughed gently. "At that time, I discussed with the elders and agreed that the threat of the taboo was indeed greater. Therefore, we got Heavenly Secrets to join forces with the primordial races to get rid of the Ho temporarily. Since Lin Xuanji insisted on opposing, we imprisoned him temporarily. We made Heavenly Secrets the young master and made contact with the primordial races for this matter. The establishment of a young master was in accordance with the rules of the palace and was only decided after a discussion between the elders of the palace. Yes, The old storyteller nodded expressionlessly. Very good. Seems like there's no problem. Pausing for a moment, the old storyteller shifted his gaze to heavenly secrets and asked indifferently, however, what's up with the blood refinement fiend sutra that you're cultivating? Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Instantly, gazes landed on heavenly secrets. Quite a few cultivators revealed looks of shock. Just now, they didn't take Su Zimo's words seriously. But now, the storyteller had spoken about this matter, so it was impossible for him to be wrong. The young lord of Enigma Palace actually cultivated the blood refinement fiend sutra. Even half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the others frowned as they looked at Tianji in disbelief. Among the crowd, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shin Jiao did not have much of a reaction. Instead, a trace of panic flashed through the depths of their eyes. Tianji, did you really cultivate that demonic technique? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe asked. Heavenly Secret's expression remained unchanged. He had long expected that he wouldn't be able to hide anything from the old storyteller. Tianji said frankly, I have indeed cultivated the blood refinement fiend mantra. However, I believe that there is nothing special about this mantra. Araki Takashi has also cultivated this demonic mantra. He still founded the Wu Dao and imparted martial arts to the masses. Not bad. The old storyteller nodded. A demonic technique is indeed nothing much. The key lies in the person who cultivates it. Araki Takashi once saved countless humans in Myriad Phenomenon City when he cultivated it. Why did you cultivate it? Master, I didn't use it to do anything that offends the heavens. Against the old storyteller's questioning, Tianji displayed his strong mental fortitude and remained calm without any hint of panic as he defended himself in a deep voice. You have something to do with Qin Pianran's death, right? The old storyteller asked indifferently. At the mention of this, the hatred fiend Qi around Yan Beichen deepened and his eyes shone with endless killing intent. Master, you're wise. I have a personal relationship with Dao Lord Immortal Sword. It wasn't appropriate for me to reject his request for help, Tianji said. Furthermore, I merely divined Qin Pianran's whereabouts. Right from the beginning, I did not attack Qin Pianran. Neither did I know that Dao Lord Immortal Sword would kill Qin Pianran. Of course you knew, the old storyteller said. Furthermore, you knew in your heart that Yan Beichen would definitely turn into a fiend once Qin Pianran is dead and become the fiend emperor hatred of this generation. Right from the beginning, your target was not Qin Pianran, but Yan Beichen. You wanted the true Shura to be born and become your first saber. Yan Beichen was stunned and his expression changed. From time to time, he would frown and his facial features would contort as though he was enduring immense pain. So, right from the beginning, he had been someone else's pawn. Pianran's death was entirely because of him. His fate was not in his control at all. Tianji remained silent. The old storyteller continued, the so-called worry of the taboo wreaking havoc in Tianhuang mainland is merely an excuse. That's because the taboo will become your second saber. There's only a single motive for capturing Night Spirit without killing him. That is to lure out the third saber, Araki Takashi. The fourth saber is the major sects and factions of the cultivation world. The fifth saber is the primordial races. The old storyteller said slowly, as for you, Tianji, you are the saber bearer behind the scenes. What you have to do is to gather the 5 sabers in Heaven and Earth Valley and kill wantonly. At that time, Heaven and Earth Valley will be filled with corpses and rivers of blood. No matter which saber is broken, it won't affect you at all. That's because you're already the biggest winner and Heaven and Earth Valley will become the best place for you to cultivate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. When these words were spoken, it was simply earth-shattering. The cultivators were shocked and dumbfounded. Even Demonist Ji, Mingjin, Lin Xuanji and the others widened their eyes in shock. Although they had heard of the battle in Heaven and Earth Valley, they did not know that there was a saber-bearer behind the scenes who was manipulating everyone's fate. Even Araki Takashi was his pawn. Su Zimo sighed internally. Initially, he had the same speculation as well. However, there were many things that he was unclear about. Now that the old storyteller had explained it so clearly, he finally understood the ins and outs of the entire matter. One had to admit that the mysteries of heaven were indeed terrifying. If not for monk Daming, Su Zimo would have become a pawn abandoned and sacrificed by Tianji. How extravagant! The old storyteller nodded and lamented as well. Although the old storyteller explained everything, Tianji was still smiling indifferently. There was no hint of panic in his eyes and he was terrifyingly calm. Tianji smiled gently. Master, you're wrong. I didn't refine a single drop of heaven and earth valley's bloodline. That's right. The old storyteller shook his head at the mention of this with a lamenting expression. Man proposes, God disposes. You schemed, but you didn't expect that you would become the sixth saber in someone else's hands. That statement was like a sharp thorn that pierced Tianji's chest. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had never made such a huge mistake before. The smile on Tianji's face gradually disappeared. It was only at this moment that a hint of anger and indignance flashed through Tianji's eyes. However, it vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye. Chapter 1461. Suddenly, Heavenly Secret smiled. Master, at the end of the day, everything is just your conjecture. You can't punish me because of some conjectures, right? Very good, as expected of my disciple. The storyteller old man nodded with a mocking expression. Su Zimo frowned slightly as well. Heavenly Secrets was right. Although what the storyteller old man said was the truth, it was only his conjecture after all. It was indeed impossible to convince everyone if he wanted to punish Heavenly Secrets because of some conjectures in front of everyone. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. I didn't kill anyone in the battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. My hands are clean. Although Tianji had been defeated, it was not to the extent of being utterly defeated. As he said, even though he had set up such a huge scheme and schemed against everyone, his hands were not stained with a single drop of blood. Master, I have nothing to say if you want to punish me. However, I'm indignant if it's just your conjecture. Heavenly Secrets bowed deeply to the storyteller old man and did not say anything else. Heavenly Secrets did not hurt anyone. If he's punished, the cultivators of the sect will probably be disappointed when they see it. That's right. Joining forces with the primordial races can't be blamed on Heavenly Secrets. It's also the result of a discussion between some of us elders. Elder Gandian and Elder Shinjio stood out to plead for Heavenly Secrets. Su Zimo sighed internally. This was indeed a difficult problem for the storyteller old man. After all, the two of them were master and disciple. The storyteller old man might not be able to bear to punish him based on his conjecture. The storyteller old man looked into the distance and remained silent for a long time before saying slowly, Of course, I won't punish you. Heavenly Secret smirked, as though he had expected this outcome. He knew his master too well. The reason why he dared to do such a thing was because he had predicted everything. He had even schemed against the storyteller old man. Pausing for a moment, the storyteller old man changed the topic. However, I've told you guys before that as disciples of Enigma Palace, don't get involved in the fights of the cultivation world easily. If you get into trouble, deal with it yourselves. I won't help you. I won't forget your teachings, Master. Heavenly Secret replied in a deep voice with a respectful expression. Since you've caused trouble today, go deal with it yourself. No one from the Enigma Palace is allowed to interfere. The old storyteller said calmly. Su Zimo was shocked. Although the old storyteller was mindful of their master-disciple relationship, he did not show favoritism. Instead, he gave Heavenly Secrets a chance. Of course, this was also an opportunity for Yen Beichen. Shura, what do you think? The old storyteller asked. Thank you, Senior. Yen Beichen's voice was cold and his eyes were filled with ferocity. Heavenly Secret was extremely calm and said in a solemn voice, Master, this disciple seeks a fair chance. In a one-on-one battle, life and death are not to be discussed. No one is allowed to interfere. Tianji's words were a reminder to Su Zimo and the others that they could not help. Don't worry, if you can survive Shura's sword, I won't punish you. But if you are in danger, I won't save you. The old storyteller said, "This battle will end all enmity. There is no victor, only life and death." Alright. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently and agreed without any fear in his eyes. As though he thought of something, Su Zimo frowned slightly and hesitated. However, on second thought, even if he said it, given Yen Beichen's character, he would not care. After all, he had waited for this moment for way too long. Although Su Zimo had a worried expression, he retreated with Ming Zhen and Demonis Ji. Everyone from Enigma Palace retreated as well. In the blink of an eye, a large empty space was revealed in midair. Yen Beichen and Heavenly Secrets stood opposite each other. "Shura, I know that Qin Pianran's death pained you greatly and you can't let it go." Heavenly Secrets said, "Right now, every single day of your life is torture. You can't wait to end your own life so that you can reunite with Qin Pianran, right?" A sinister glint shone in Heavenly Secrets' eyes. Even his tone turned gentle, causing one to trust him from the bottom of their hearts and let down their guard. Yen Beichen frowned and lowered his head slightly, as though he was reminded of the past and was in pain and self-reproach. What the profound bewitchment technique? Demonis Ji frowned slightly and murmured softly. She was the most familiar with such techniques. However, she did not expect that Heavenly Secrets' attainments in bewitchment techniques were not weaker than hers. The Shen-Tian record was all-encompassing. As the disciple of the old storyteller, Heavenly Secrets possessed shocking talent and was even more knowledgeable. Nobody knew how strong Heavenly Secrets' combat strength was because he rarely attacked. Up till this point of his cultivation, Heavenly Secrets did not have to do anything personally if he wanted to do anything. All he had to do was set up a little and everything would be resolved naturally. Both parties looked like they were standing opposite each other motionlessly. However, Heavenly Secrets had already made his move. "Since you're in so much pain, why don't I send you on your way?" Heavenly Secrets continued to bewitch Yen Beichen and said gently, "Give up, I'm helping you. As long as you're dead, you'll be able to reunite with Qin Pianran. Qin Pianran is waiting for you down there anxiously. Can't you feel it?" Yen Beichen's body trembled even more violently and his features were contorted. "What should we do? Shura can't hold on much longer." Demonis Ji had a worried expression. If he can't break free from Heavenly Secrets' bewitchment, Shura will probably commit suicide on the spot even without Heavenly Secrets' help. "He won't," Su Zimo shook his head slowly. "Brother Yen cultivates the Hatred Sutra and the hatred in his heart transcends everything. If Heavenly Secrets wants to bewitch Brother Yen with his bewitchment technique, he's underestimating the Hatred Sutra and Brother Yen." Right then, Yen Beichen's body gradually stopped trembling and calmed down. "What's wrong? Have you decided?" Heavenly Secrets walked towards Yen Beichen slowly and asked gently. Suddenly, Yen Beichen raised his head. His eyes were pitch black like two black holes that could devour everything. Heavenly Secrets was alarmed when he caught sight of those eyes. "Indeed, I'm in pain and I've let Pianran down as well," Yen Beichen said slowly. "However, even if I commit suicide, I have to kill you first. If not for you, Pianran wouldn't have died. Heavenly Secrets, he deserved to die." Buzz. Before his sentence was finished, Yen Beichen swung the Hatred Fiend's saber in his hands and slashed viciously towards Heavenly Secrets through the void. That slash not only contained the endless hatred of the Hatred Sutra, it also contained the torrential killing intent of the Shura Sutra. The saber intents of the two fiend techniques fused into one with that slash. This was the strongest slash that Yen Beichen had released ever since he started cultivating. Even Su Zimo, who was watching from afar, felt his scalp tingle when he saw the burst of that slash and was secretly speechless. The Hatred Fiend's saber streaked through the air. A black beam descended above Heavenly Secrets' head with hatred and killing intent, as though it wanted to destroy everything. Chapter 1462. That slash was so terrifying that even Su Zimo might not be able to defend against it. Heavenly Secrets retracted his smile with a grim expression. He had not expected that his bewitchment would force out the most terrifying Shura. Slapping his storage bag with his left hand, Heavenly Secrets took out a protection talisman and tore it apart instantly, forming a defensive barrier around him. At the same time, he conjured hand seals repeatedly. Mystic Heaven Dermic Robe. Mystic Heaven Mirror. Suddenly, a robe with dermic powers appeared on Heavenly Secrets' body and shone with a mysterious luster. An ancient mirror appeared in his right hand as well and blocked the descending black beam in midair. In the blink of an eye, Heavenly Secrets released 3 defensive methods. The Mystic Heaven Mirror was the first to shatter. Normally speaking, the Mystic Heaven Mirror could reflect attacks. However, the power of Yenbeichen's slash was way too terrifying. The saber intent of the 2 fiend techniques, the Hatred Sutra and Shura Sutra, was something that even the Mystic Heaven Mirror could not defend against and shattered instantly. Immediately after, it was the defensive barrier formed by the protection talisman. The main body of the Hatred Fiend saber did not even hit the barrier. The black beam that burst forth merely sliced the barrier into 2. Boom. Thereafter, the black beam struck the Mystic Heaven Dermic Robe heavily with a deafening sound. The Mystic Heaven Dermic powers shattered and the main body of the Hatred Fiend saber was revealed. However, that slash did not slice Heavenly Secrets into 2. Instead, it met with an immense resistance. Bang! Heavenly Secrets fell heavily to the ground. However, he struggled to stand up quickly, covered in dust. His face was pale and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The clothes in front of Heavenly Secrets' chest had already been sliced apart by the Hatred Fiend saber, revealing his inner armor. It was a defensive Khanate mighty figure dermic weapon that was extremely precious. Previously, Heavenly Secrets suffered a loss in Heaven and Earth Valley. After returning, he wore the inner armor and it could be considered as saving his life today. In order to defend against Shura's slash, Heavenly Secrets had to release 4 defensive methods to defend against it. Crack, crack, crack. Right then, a shuddering sound came from the inner armor. Heavenly Secrets lowered his head. A crack appeared on the inner armor and split it into 2. The glow of the inner armor dimmed rapidly. This inner armor had fallen off from Tianji's body and was completely destroyed. The crowd was in an uproar. That single slash crippled a Khanate mighty figure dermic weapon. Good. Heavenly Secrets nodded slowly. It's no wonder why it's the weapon of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. To think that it would still be this sharp after being sealed away for so many years. However, Shura, can you still release such a blade intent? Tianji sneered. This kind of attack that fused 2 types of saber intents was not inferior to Su Zimo's instantaneous eruption of tens of thousands of heaven-slaying sword chi. It consumed a lot of one's essence spirit. It was impossible for him to release a second strike in such a short period of time. Tianji had long seen through Yenbeichen's facade. He smiled and said, Shura, you won't be able to hold on much longer. This saber strike has exhausted everything you have. When Yenbeichen arrived in front of Enigma Palace, he was trapped in the exquisite killing formation and nearly lost his life. When he came out, he was already covered in wounds. However, he did not recuperate at all and fought against Tianji with his injured body. At this point of the battle, his injuries were even more severe and he was holding on with his immense willpower and hatred. Of course, Tianji was in a terrible state as well. Yenbeichen pursed his lips tightly and continued charging over without saying a word. His footsteps were already staggering. However, his gaze was fixed on Tianji the entire time without shifting at all. Tianji wielded his folding fan. The 2 of them fought once more. Blood splattered everywhere as their figures intersected. Yenbeichen fought without any regard for his life. He wanted to slay Tianji even if he was severely injured. His fighting style caused Tianji to be restrained. His folding fan smashed towards Yenbeichen's head. However, Yenbeichen did not even look or defend. Instead, he slashed in reverse towards Tianji's glabella. In less than 10 breaths, Yenbeichen gained the upper hand once more. However, the 2 of them had expended too much stamina, dermic powers and blood chi up until this point of the battle, and there was not much left. This battle was no longer purely about technique and strength. Instead, it was a battle of mentality and willpower. No one knew who the final victor would be until the very last moment. The two figures intersected once more. Heavenly Secrets' folding fan shattered Yen Beichen's arm. Yen Beichen's hatred fiend saber left a gigantic wound on Tianji's chest that was dripping with blood. Tianji's expression had turned extremely ugly. The wound caused by the hatred fiend saber was extremely difficult to heal. Furthermore, it contained the hatred fiend chi that was destroying his body continuously. If this continued, there was a high chance that he would fall first. Yen Beichen used the hatred fiend saber as a crutch with his right hand and limped towards Tianji. His other arm hung limply by his side, the bones of which had been shattered. There was no longer any dermic powers in his body. It was impossible for him to repair that shattered arm. Even so, the hatred and killing intent in Yen Beichen's eyes did not change at all right from the beginning. That gaze caused Tianji to feel flustered. Tianji could not hold it in any longer. This was also his final trump card. The Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Before the battle, he had specially requested the old storyteller to have a fair battle without allowing anyone to interfere. When he made that request, he was already prepared to release the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Even if he channeled that fiend technique, no one could interfere. Although there were not many people who truly died in front of Enigma Palace, as long as he refined these bloodlines, it would be enough for him to recover to his peak condition within a short period of time. Shura, it's over. Tianji looked at Shura, who was walking over with a mocking expression. He channeled a mental cultivation technique, and a strange sanguine glint shone in his eyes as he said slowly, Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Not good. Su Zimo was alarmed. He had the same worry before the battle. He knew the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra the best. If Tianji could recover rapidly by releasing the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, there would be no suspense in this battle. When he saw that, the old storyteller suddenly sighed and shook his head, his eyes filled with disappointment. Yen Beichen did not seem to have heard what Tianji said. Or rather, he did not care at all. No matter what cultivation technique Tianji released, there was only a single obsession in his heart, to kill Tianji. Yen Beichen continued forward and arrived before Tianji before long. Raising the hatred fiend saber, he slashed forward. The slash was soft and powerless without any saber technique, let alone saber intent. Yen Beichen's arm was already at its limit to be able to raise the hatred fiend saber and slash down. However, at that moment, Tianji's expression changed starkly, as though he was frozen on the spot with widened eyes, as though he had seen a ghost. Under countless gazes, the hatred fiend saber slashed at Tianji's head. The blade pierced his bones and almost split his head into two. That slash even tore through Tianji's consciousness. Naturally, his essence spirit was not spared either. What was going on? Tianji was dead? The cultivators present were not the only ones. Even Su Zimo was dumbfounded and confused as he watched everything in disbelief. Chapter 1463. Yen Beichen was stunned as well. Even he had not expected that his slash would be able to kill Heavenly Secrets. The hatred fiend saber tore through Heavenly Secrets' consciousness, and the hatred fiend chi on the saber had already rushed in. Heavenly Secrets' essence spirit would not be able to hold out for long before it was devoured by the hatred fiend chi. How could this be? Heavenly Secrets' face was covered in blood as he widened his eyes in shock and anger, muttering repeatedly, "How could this be?" Ice. The storyteller old man sighed with sorrow and disappointment in his eyes. "Master, how could this be? How could I have lost?" Heavenly Secrets turned his head slightly and looked at the storyteller old man in disbelief. Heavenly Secrets, if you did not use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in this battle, you would have had some conscience. The moment you released that fiend technique, you had already lost. The storyteller old man sighed once more with a lamenting expression. This time round, you've lost completely and utterly. This time? Heavenly Secrets asked, and his eyes widened in anger as though he had thought of something. Su Zimo frowned slightly in deep thought as well. Right at this moment, the old storyteller added, "Someone came here and refined the bloodline here in advance." Su Zimo was shocked. Instantly, Su Zimo was enlightened. Monk Daming. Earlier on, Monk Daming had been here. However, no one noticed him when the group of cultivators were fighting in front of Enigma Palace. Monk Daming had secretly refined and absorbed all the bloodlines scattered here. That was the reason why Heavenly Secrets was stunned when he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. That was because all the bloodlines here had been refined and there was no reaction when he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Heavenly Secrets' blood chi was depleted and he was exhausted to begin with. Coupled with the sudden change, his reaction was slightly slower and his head was cleaved apart by Yen Beichen. The storyteller old man knew about this long ago. Therefore, he already knew the outcome when he saw Heavenly Secrets use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. The fact that the storyteller old man did not capture Monk Daming meant that he had already retreated before the storyteller old man arrived. Throughout the entire process, no one noticed him at all. If the old storyteller hadn't pointed it out, even Su Zimo wouldn't have noticed it. All of a sudden, Su Zimo thought of something. Back on 6-Star Mountain, Monk Daming had once told him that Enigma Palace might be able to resolve the kill order on him. Su Zimo was a little wary of Monk Daming. At that time, when Monk Daming said those words, Su Zimo had a feeling that Monk Daming had other motives. Later on, Monk Daming said that Yen Beichen was going to Enigma Palace to seek revenge from Heavenly Secrets. Su Zimo did not think too much about it and headed straight for Enigma Palace. Who would have thought that he would still end up as a pawn in Monk Daming's hands? Most importantly, even if Su Zimo knew that Monk Daming was making use of him, he would still have to come to Enigma Palace. Whether it was for Lin Xuanji or Yen Beichen, he had no choice but to come to Enigma Palace. However, the moment he arrived at Enigma Palace, he would be made use of by Monk Daming. That method was countless times more brilliant than Heavenly Secrets'. However, Su Zimo was still puzzled. If Monk Daming was only here to refine the bloodline, was there a need for him to take the risk and come to Enigma Palace to refine it? This time round, a Mahayana patriarch was alarmed. Furthermore, there was a high chance that an emperor like the old storyteller had descended. Once Monk Daming's tracks were exposed, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Furthermore, there were not many cultivators who truly died in this battle. Most of them were severely injured and did not have much bloodline left. Monk Daming was that cautious. Could he have set up such a trap just to refine that bit of bloodline? It's him! Right then, Heavenly Secrets suddenly roared hysterically. Blood was still flowing from Heavenly Secrets' face. When he heard that, his features contorted and his expression was menacing and extremely terrifying. Su Zimo sighed internally as he looked at Heavenly Secrets. As the old storyteller's disciple, Heavenly Secrets could be said to be meticulous and meticulous. However, it was a pity that by chance, Su Zimo and the others had released Monk Daming in this lifetime. In the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, Heavenly Secrets was greatly injured because of Monk Daming. This time round, Heavenly Secrets was defeated again. With this defeat, Heavenly Secrets lost his life. Come out! Heavenly Secrets looked around and roared loudly. He had completely lost his mind. Come out, I want to see who you are. At this moment, Heavenly Secrets looked pitiful and sad. Monk Daming did not appear and Heavenly Secrets had already lost. He had lost twice. He had lost completely and miserably. Most importantly, from the beginning to the end, Heavenly Secrets did not know who he had lost to. In fact, he did not even know if the person who schemed against him twice was a man or a woman, what sect he was from, or what he looked like. How huge of a blow was that for someone who thought that he was extremely smart and had everything under control? He left a long time ago. The old storyteller shook his head and sighed. He's gone. Tianji grinned as blood continued to drip from his cheeks. He mumbled to himself for a while before suddenly laughing maniacally with a mournful look on his face. Fu-fu-ha. Heavenly Secrets' gaze landed on Su Zimo and the others as he laughed sinisterly. Pawns, they're all pawns. Even though he's so strong, he's still someone else's pawn. All of you. Heavenly Secrets pointed at Su Zimo, Yen Beichen and even the old storyteller and grinned. None of you can escape. Your fates are already predestined. Ha! Exclamation point. Yen Beichen could not take it anymore. After resting for a while and recovering his strength, he slashed once more and split Heavenly Secrets' head into two. Heavenly Secrets' laughter stopped abruptly. Heavenly Secrets' essence spirit was also shattered by the hatred fiend's saber and was destroyed on the spot. The Heavenly Secrets' corpse fell heavily into a pool of blood. However, Heavenly Secrets' laughter just now still lingered in everyone's ears and did not dissipate for a long time, sending chills down their spines. The old storyteller closed his eyes, as though he could not bear it. No matter what, Heavenly Secrets was his disciple after all. He was filled with guilt and self-blame for his outcome today. Lin Xuanji was no longer as cheeky as before and had a grim expression. He could not help but recall the scenes of him pestering Heavenly Secrets to play with him when he was young. At that time, he was carefree and happy. No matter what he played, Heavenly Secrets could defeat him easily. Even in terms of cultivation realm, Heavenly Secrets was far superior to him and had entered the conjoint body realm long ago. The old storyteller had a total of 4 disciples and Heavenly Secrets was the most outstanding in every aspect. To think that he would die in front of Enigma Palace today. Pianran, did you see that? After killing Heavenly Secrets, the anger in Yen Beichen's heart dissipated instantly. He knelt down and looked into the skies, saying in a daze, "I've killed all the enemies who killed you. I didn't let a single one of them off. Pianran, don't worry. I'll accompany you very soon." Very soon. With that said, Yen Beichen could no longer hold on and fell to the ground with a thud, unconscious. Yen Beichen was already exhausted and covered in injuries. The reason why he could hold on until now was entirely because of Heavenly Secrets. Now that Heavenly Secrets was killed, he could no longer hold on and fainted as well. Chapter 1464. Brother Yen. Worried, Su Zimo arrived beside Yen Beichen in a flash and took out a few elixirs from his storage bag before stuffing them into Yen Beichen's mouth. The old storyteller tapped gently with his fingertip and a divine light entered Yen Beichen's body. Yen Beichen's injuries stabilized rapidly. He's fine, merely severely injured. Now that he has taken revenge, his tense mental state has relaxed and he fainted for a moment. The old storyteller said, given his bloodline, he only needs to rest for a few days to recover. As the successor of the Fiend Emperor Hatred, unless he commits suicide, it'll be difficult for him to die even if he wants to. His injuries are not external, they're internal. The old storyteller said meaningfully. Su Zimo understood. Yen Beichen's true injury was in his heart. To begin with, he was filled with guilt and self-reproach and lived in pain every day. The only thing that kept him alive was revenge. Now that he had taken revenge and Yen Beichen no longer had that obsession, there was a high chance that he would commit suicide like the Fiend Emperor Hatred. In a while, bring him to Enigma Palace and stay for a few days. The old storyteller said, when he wakes up, you can persuade him as well. Thank you, Senior. Su Zimo thanked him hurriedly. Today, Yen Beichen barged into Enigma Palace and even killed a half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace. However, the old storyteller did not blame him. Instead, he took Yen Beichen in. That magnanimity was something that the other cultivators of Enigma Palace could not compare to. Frowning, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe took a step forward, as though he wanted to say something. Patriarch Qing Qing glared at him and shook his head slightly. Startled, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe retreated hurriedly. Su Zimo helped Yen Beichen up and handed him over to Mingjin before coming before the old storyteller. Bowing deeply, he said, I was rude today and barged into Enigma Palace and fought with the cultivators of Enigma Palace. Please forgive me, Senior. It's nothing. There's a reason for this. It's not your fault. The storyteller did not blame him at all. Instead, he smiled and said, Moreover, compared to the battle in Heaven and Earth Valley, you've already restrained yourself. In fact, there weren't many people who had truly fallen since the start of the battle. Even though some of the Arcanum Palace half-martial ancestors had been heavily injured by the Arcanum Breaker Bow, Their fleshly bodies had been destroyed, and their primal souls had managed to escape. If Su Zimo wanted to kill their primordial spirits, it would be a piece of cake. Although the old storyteller was not present, he seemed to have seen through everything. He knew in his heart that if Su Zimo had truly gone on a killing spree, rivers of blood would have flowed in front of Enigma Palace. Su Zimo handed over the Dharma dispersing bow again. This is a treasure of Enigma Palace. Since today's matter is resolved, I'll return it to its owner. The old storyteller glanced at it indifferently. Since you were the one who snatched this bow, you can keep it. Ah? Su Zimo was stunned. The Dharma dispersing bow was one of the ancient unique treasures with terrifying might. Just now it was revealed. In his hands, its might was even more shocking. Yet, the old storyteller gave him such a precious treasure so casually. How can that do? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe finally could not help but say, that Dharma dispersing bow is an ancient unique treasure and one of the treasures of Enigma Palace. How can you give it to an outsider so casually? You still have the cheek to say that? The old storyteller sneered. Since you can't even protect the Dharma dispersing bow and let it be snatched away, it proves that it's useless in your hands. You might as well give it to someone else. Even if it's given to someone else, it can't be Araki Takashi. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe's face flushed red as he argued, Araki Takashi has just killed a conjoint body mighty figure of our palace and severely injured several half-martial ancestor experts. If the Dharma dispersing bow is given to him, won't the cultivators of the palace be bitterly disappointed? Bitterly disappointed? The old storyteller sneered again. What's more bitterly disappointed than the palace lord being incompetent and unable to differentiate right from wrong? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe shuddered. The old storyteller's gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe and the others as he said coldly, "You guys are really promising. The outcome of your discussion is to join forces with the primordial races and ask a tiger for its skin. The primordial taboo is the reason why you guys joined forces with the primordial races? You've truly forgotten your ancestors. Damn it." The old storyteller's tone was extremely stern as his gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. Qing Zhe is incompetent and can't differentiate right from wrong. From today onwards, he'll be stripped of his position as the palace lord and reflect on his mistakes. Without my orders, he's not allowed to come out of seclusion. The crowd was in an uproar. Nobody expected that half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe would be stripped of his position as the palace lord of Enigma Palace because of this battle. This punishment could be said to be extremely harsh. Isn't this punishment a little too much? Patriarch Qing Qing frowned slightly and whispered, "How can we blame fellow Taoist Qing Zhe for this?" Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian stood out and looked at the old storyteller, saying in a deep voice, "Although you're the storyteller of this generation of Enigma Palace and have a transcendent status, you can't be this unreasonable, right?" Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Judging from the tone of half-martial ancestor Qian Tian, it seemed like the identity of the storyteller was not simple. Half-martial ancestor Shinjiu nodded as well. For today's matter, we had no choice but to fight when Araki Takashi and the others barged into Enigma Palace to demand for their daughter. No matter what, Araki Takashi and the others were the ones who were rude first. Foo-foo. The old storyteller sneered, "I've been roaming the mortal world and haven't returned to the palace for a long time. I have to thank Araki Takashi this time round. If not for their mess, I wouldn't have known that Enigma Palace would have fallen to such a state. Right now, Enigma Palace is truly filled with all sorts of people. All sorts of monsters have appeared for this battle." There was a hint of cold killing intent in the old storyteller's tone. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shinjiu felt a little guilty. Their gazes flickered for a moment before they stopped arguing and remained silent. Also, the old storyteller's expression was cold and he no longer had the playful attitude he had just now as he said slowly, "That lass is the successor of ancestral master Linglong. Even I wouldn't hurt her. Yet you guys tried to kill her?" Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, Half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the others lowered their heads, not daring to speak. Indeed, they were in the wrong for this matter. Demoness Ji had obtained Fairy Ling Long's inheritance, and her status was even more noble than the palace master of Enigma Palace. No one from Enigma Palace could hurt her. Their attack was equivalent to disrespecting ancestral Master Linglong. Demoness Ji had been suppressing her anger the entire time. Now that she heard the old storyteller's words, the anger in her heart dissipated and she could not help but laugh. Bowing to the old storyteller, she said, "Senior, thank you for standing up for Yaoyin." "It's fine," the old storyteller waved it off. "Senior, I'm fine. Let's forget about today's matter." Demoness Ji did not want to incur the wrath of most experts of Enigma Palace because of this matter. "It's fine," the old storyteller shook his head. "Today's matter isn't over yet." The old storyteller's gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shun Jiao as he asked coldly, "When did you guys learn the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra?" Chapter 1465. Half-martial ancestor Shun Jiao and half-martial ancestor Qian Tian were shocked. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the others were also shocked as they turned to look at Qian Tian and Shun Jiao in disbelief. Qian Tian and Shun Jiao had terrible expressions. In front of the storyteller, the two of them did not even have the courage to lie. "Indeed, we cultivated this fiend technique. However, that's nothing much, right?" Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian forced a laugh and explained, "Enigma Palace is located in the rivers of Hainan and does not belong to any immortal, Buddhist or fiend sections. There is no lack of cultivation techniques of the fiend sects in our sect. The other fiend techniques are nothing much, but don't you guys know what sort of cultivation technique the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra is?" The storyteller's gaze was sharp as he said coldly, "Don't you guys know how great of a disaster that fiend caused in Tianhuang mainland 40,000 years ago? Once you're tainted by this fiend technique, you'll sink into it. Given your temperaments, can you control it?" Under the pressure of the storyteller, half-martial ancestor Shun Jiao and half-martial ancestor Qian Tian broke out in cold sweat and did not dare to make a sound. "Speak. Who imparted this fiend technique to you guys?" The storyteller asked slowly. "It's heavenly secrets. It's heavenly secrets." Half-martial ancestor Shun Jiao could not take it and was the first to speak. "We've already lived for more than 15,000 years and are about to enter our later years. However, we're still unable to enter the Mahayana realm. It was Heavenly Secrets who took the initiative to look for us and said that there was a cultivation technique that could help us enter the Mahayana realm. We only cultivated it because we wanted to become Mahayana patriarchs and strengthen our sect." No wonder. A look of realization flashed through Lin Xuanji's eyes. For the past 2 years, Qian Tian and Shun Jiao would fully support any decision that Heavenly Secrets made. Even when they joined forces with the primordial races to imprison Lin Xuanji, Qian Tian and Shun Jiao were the first to stand on Heavenly Secrets' side. However, although the two of them had found the source of the fiend technique, they would never know how Heavenly Secrets learned it. The storyteller closed his eyes for a long time before opening them slowly. He looked at Qian Tian and Shun Jiao and said deeply, "You guys have already committed a grave sin by cultivating this fiend technique. Since you've been in the Enigma Palace for so many years, I can spare you this time. However, everything you've learned in your lifetime, you'll have to return to the Enigma Palace. From today onwards, you'll be mortals. Don't cultivate anymore." Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shun Jiao were greatly shocked. To be immortal. The old storyteller's intention was to cripple their cultivation. The two of them lowered their heads slightly as a strange bloody light flashed in the depths of their eyes. Suddenly, a huge mist of blood burst out from half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shun Jiao's bodies as they fled in 2 different directions. The speed of this blood-red light was simply too fast. In the blink of an eye, he was already 1,000 miles away. This was the blood escape technique from the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Patriarch Qingcheng frowned and reached out to grab half-martial ancestor Qian Tian. His palm brushed past the bloody light. The old ancestor's attack was actually still slower by a fraction. Half-martial ancestor burned his bloodline and unleashed the blood escape art. His speed was indeed terrifying. By the time old ancestor Qing Cheng reacted, the two of them had already fled to the horizon. Ha! The laughter of half-martial ancestor Qian Tian sounded. Old storyteller, we've been in Enigma Palace for many years and have worked hard even if we didn't contribute anything. To think that you're going to cripple our cultivation with just a few words. After the two of us escape today, the world will be vast. Old dog, you'll regret it sooner or later. The day we become patriarchs will be the day we make a comeback. Haha. The two of them laughed wantonly. The old storyteller was expressionless and motionless. All of a sudden, the old storyteller reached out with both palms and pulled in the direction that the two of them were escaping. It felt as though he was trying to pull the two half-martial ancestors back from 1,000 miles away. A strange force spread across the place. There was no commotion that reverberated through the world. However, under the gazes of the crowd, the two figures that were about to disappear into the horizon gradually became clearer. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shinjiu were still releasing blood escape and their speed did not decrease at all. However, the distance between the two of them and the old storyteller was shrinking continuously. They were clearly in the opposite direction, but the more they fled, the closer they were to the old storyteller. Pissed, the crowd sucked in a cold breath. That method had already exceeded everyone's understanding. Is that a divine power? Su Zimo murmured softly. Before long, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shinjiu were pulled back by the old storyteller from 1,000 miles away. Under the old storyteller's gaze, the two half-martial ancestors were terrified and continued to flee with all their might. However, no matter how hard they tried, they only got closer and closer to the old storyteller and returned to Enigma Palace before long. This time round, the two of them were truly frightened. Please, 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 spare our lives. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shinjiu knelt down with pale faces and spoke incoherently. Previously, I could have spared your lives, the old storyteller shook his head slowly. But not now. The moment he said that, the old storyteller did not give the two half-martial ancestors a chance to argue. He extended his palm and slashed in front of the two of them. The heads of the two half-martial ancestors seemed to have been sliced into two by some divine weapon. Blood spewed out and their essence spirits were destroyed on the spot. Two half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace were dead. All the cultivators in the world fell silent. Half-martial ancestor experts were almost peak existences in the cultivation world. However, in the hands of the old storyteller, they were killed casually like two ants. Every single cultivator of Enigma Palace looked at the old storyteller with reverence. Su Zimo sighed internally. The old storyteller was hesitant when dealing with heavenly secrets. In the end, he even gave heavenly secrets a chance. That gave everyone the illusion that the old storyteller was more benevolent. However, in reality, the reason why the old storyteller was hesitant was because heavenly secrets was his disciple. How could he sever their master-disciple relationship within a short period of time? However, later on, the old storyteller fully displayed his decisiveness to kill. With just a few words, he crippled the palace lord of Enigma Palace. He killed two half-martial ancestors with a thunderous might, without the slightest bit of hesitation or sloppiness. This attack completely intimidated the entire Enigma Palace. Bury the two of them. The old storyteller waved his hand and turned to look at Su Zimo and the others. Today, it's all thanks to you guys that Enigma Palace can eliminate a huge threat. Senior, you're being too serious, Su Zimo said hurriedly. If there's nothing else, why don't you rest in Enigma Palace for a few days? The old storyteller said, That's good. Let me show you guys around. Alright, thank you, Senior. Su Zimo cupped his fist slightly. Yen Beichen was unconscious and could recuperate in Enigma Palace for a few days. At the same time, he could find an opportunity to ask about the Bloodvine race's killing order. Chapter 1466. Let's go. Follow me into the palace. The old storyteller nodded slightly to Su Zimo and the others and said, "Now that this matter is settled, I'll take my leave first." Patriarch Ching Chung bowed slightly to the old storyteller and said respectfully, "Yes, you can go back." The old storyteller waved it off. Patriarch Ching Chung raised his head and glanced at Su Zimo casually. Then, he turned around and swiped his palm across the void, causing a huge crack to appear in the void. Patriarch Ching Chung leaped into the crack and disappeared. In the blink of an eye, the crack gradually healed and returned to normal. Tearing through the void casually is the power of the Mahayana realm. The old storyteller explained, if one can enter the Mahayana realm and become a patriarch, they can tear through the void at any time and traverse 5,000 kilometers. Su Zimo nodded, still recalling the gaze that Patriarch Ching Chung gave him before he left. That gaze was filled with hostility. Because of Su Zimo, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe's position as the palace lord was abolished. Even Patriarch Ching Chung was berated by the old storyteller and lost face. Although he did not say anything, he must be resentful. Su Zimo glanced at the old storyteller again. He had met this old man back in the capital of Great Zhou. However, who would have thought that this old man who played around in the mortal world would have such a powerful identity and status? Even Mahayana patriarchs had to bow down and obey his orders. "Senior, are you an emperor?" Su Zimo could not suppress his curiosity and could not help but ask. The old storyteller smiled. "Yes." That simple word caused Su Zimo and the others to feel their hearts skip a beat. Although they had a premonition, it was a different feeling when the old storyteller admitted it. The legendary emperor was standing right beside them. Demonist Ji blinked and asked, "Then what's your title, senior?" Generally speaking, emperors had specific titles. For example, the Human Emperor, Saber Emperor, Thunder Emperor, and so on. "My title is Xian," Yi Futian said. The old storyteller said indifferently, "Profound sovereign." Su Zimo thought for a moment and asked, "Then what does the so-called storyteller mean?" Storytellers are a special existence in the Enigma Palace. They're not bound by any of the Enigma Palace's rules. The old storyteller said, this existence can be traced back to the ancient era. Ancestral Master Linglong's disciples were the first storytellers. In every generation, there is only one storyteller. The responsibility of a storyteller is to wander the mortal world and tell stories everywhere. Su Zimo had seen the storyteller's storytelling process before, and it was indeed very good. Most of the stories were about supernatural beings and legends. Su Zimo had once listened to a short part of it, and it was indeed very fascinating. What the old storyteller said was as if it had really happened. When he spoke of it, it was as if he had been there and immersed in it. However, this storyteller's position in the Enigma Palace was so noble and special. His responsibility was actually to play the world and tell stories everywhere. It was truly a little absurd. Why would the Enigma Palace establish such an existence? Demonist Ji asked in confusion. Do you guys know the reason why Fairy Ling Long established the Enigma Palace? The old storyteller asked instead of answering. Su Zimo and the others shook their heads. The old storyteller said, the ancient sages once had a saying of the three immortals. The first was to establish virtue, the second was to establish merit, and the third was to establish one's word. It's known as immortality. Merit, and words? Su Zimo murmured softly in deep thought. The old storyteller continued, the reason why the Enigma Palace was established was to establish one's word. The so-called word is to record history, extend merit, pass down civilization, and inherit the great Tao. There are many things that, as time passes and people grow old, they will gradually be forgotten by others. However, the Enigma Palace will not forget. Instead, it will record these things and pass them down. I've traveled the mortal world for tens of thousands of years and talked about the dark and tragic days of the human race in the primordial era. I talked about the ancient war and the biographies of the emperors. All of these things happened in reality and were recorded in the Enigma Palace. This is the civilization of the human race. Su Zimo and the others were dumbfounded and shocked. Su Zimo had not expected that the story of the old storyteller's travels was not made up. It was something that had happened in the past. More than that, he had not thought that the reason why the Enigma Palace was established was not to pass down Dao techniques and secret skills, but to pass down the civilization and soul of the entire human race. That was the reason why Fairy Ling Long established the Enigma Palace. The old storyteller stopped in his tracks and gazed into the distance, lamenting, "The world changes and there's no race that will prosper forever." Ancestral Master Ling Long had long predicted that the fortune of the human race would decline one day as well. Perhaps, the human race will encounter a calamity and experience hardships. However, as long as the Enigma Palace exists, the civilization of the human race will be passed down forever. As long as the civilization is not destroyed, the human race will rise again one day. One day, the human race will welcome a glorious era like the ancient era where multiple emperors rose. When they heard that, be it Su Zimo, Demoness Ji and Ming Zhen, all of them looked in the direction of the Enigma Palace with deep respect. Instantly, everyone felt as though they were reversing the river of time and saw the peerless woman who stood on this land in the ancient era. Although Fairy Ling Long was not conferred the title of emperor, she was worthy of praise. A moment later, Demoness Ji asked again, "Senior, doesn't that mean that many things about Tianhuang mainland are recorded in the Enigma Palace?" "That's right," the old storyteller nodded with a smile. "Senior, what are the biographies of the emperors that you were talking about just now?" The old storyteller smiled. "Enigma Palace will create a biography for anyone who is conferred the title of emperor and leave behind a biography that belongs to them." "Wow," Demoness Ji exclaimed and said enviously, "that's truly something that will go down in history and be passed down through the ages." That was a great honor. In the cultivation world, the legends of emperors were extremely widespread and most of them were because of Enigma Palace. At that point, the old storyteller suddenly turned around and looked at Su Zimo with deep anticipation in his eyes. "Araki Takashi, Enigma Palace has already decided to create a biography for you alone." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he asked instinctively, "Didn't they say that only emperors are qualified to create their own biographies?" "The reason why they're creating a biography for you has nothing to do with being an emperor. It's because you're a Araki Takashi and you created the Wu Dao to impart martial arts to all living beings." The old storyteller said, "Even the ancient emperors did not create such merit. That alone is worth creating a biography for you alone to be passed down through the ages." Throughout history, Su Zimo was the only one who created a biography for himself without being an emperor. The old storyteller continued, "I didn't write the name of the biography. That's because I don't know what your future accomplishments will be. Perhaps, even becoming an emperor isn't your end. I hope that I'll be fortunate enough to finish writing this biography in this lifetime. If I can't, I'll have to rely on the storyteller of my next life." With that said, the old storyteller glanced at Lin Xuanji beside him. Chapter 1467. Everyone looked at Lin Xuanji. According to the old storyteller, there was a high chance that Lin Xuanji would be the successor of the next generation's storyteller. "Old man, you're in such good health. There's no hurry to explain these things," Lin Xuanji pouted. "I'm still young and can't shoulder such a huge responsibility." The old storyteller said, "Fortune and misfortune are unpredictable. Although I can divine everything, I can't divine how long I can live. It's better to say some things in advance. Old man, don't say any more. It's inauspicious." Lin Xuanji frowned again. Although he joked around with the old storyteller and scolded him impolitely, in his heart, the old storyteller was his kin. The old storyteller smiled with a reminiscing expression. "I've taken in 4 disciples in this lifetime and arranged you guys according to the heaven, earth, black and yellow rankings. Heavenly Secrets is your eldest senior brother. Among the 4 of you, Heavenly Secrets is the most talented and cultivated the fastest. Be it in terms of combat strength or wisdom, he far surpasses you guys." Lin Xuanji nodded. Indeed, senior brother is better than me. The four of you have different personalities. Heavenly Secrets is calm and mature. Earth Secrets is a little old-fashioned and doesn't know how to adapt. Yellow Secrets is honest and pure. As for you, the old storyteller looked at Lin Xuanji and paused for a moment. Your personality is the most similar to mine. Unrestrained and frivolous. Normally speaking, Heavenly Secrets should be the most suitable to inherit the storyteller. Unfortunately, I was careless and Heavenly Secrets was led astray. Now that he's at this point, there's no turning back. At the mention of Heavenly Secrets, the old storyteller's eyes revealed a hint of sorrow. No matter what, Heavenly Secrets was his eldest disciple and far surpassed Lin Xuanji and the other two in terms of wisdom, personality, talent, and combat strength. The old storyteller had high hopes for Heavenly Secrets as well. To think that Heavenly Secrets would plot against the experts of the world in order to cultivate the blood refinement fiend sutra, causing rivers of blood to flow in the battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. Senior, traces of the primordial races have been appearing frequently in Tianhuang mainland all these years, and all the races are restless. The cultivation world should be prepared. Su Zimo couldn't help but ask. The old storyteller did not answer. He glanced sideways and asked, "You must be very disappointed with the major sects and forces of the cultivation world, right?" Su Zimo didn't say anything, but it was a tacit agreement. Over the years, they had experienced many things. The attitude of cultivators towards the primordial races was no longer tough. Instead, they were filled with fear. The southern region's Southern Dual sect was destroyed by the Blood Vine race without a single super sect appearing. Without harming themselves, no one was willing to wade into these muddy waters. However, if the major sects and factions maintained that attitude, the primordial races would walk out of the Forbidden Grounds sooner or later and invade and kill everywhere in Tianhuang mainland. At that time, who would be able to escape? When the nest is overturned, there are no unbroken eggs. Actually, it's not their fault. The old storyteller said, firstly, the human race has never been threatened since ancient times. In such an environment, they would naturally be at ease and afraid of battle. Secondly, the humans' luck has indeed declined in this era. Whether it's Mahayana great ancestors or rulers, they're far fewer than in ancient times. Some super sects don't even have sovereigns. There's no way they can fight against the primordial races in a head-on clash. Su Zimo nodded. Dipankara Temple was one of them. The old storyteller continued, thirdly, and this is also the most important point. Right now, the cultivation world lacks a peerless expert who can lead the human race. In the ancient era, there were peerless experts like the human emperor. With a single call, all the emperors in the world responded and none of them dared to disobey. But now, the human race lacks such an expert. Su Zimo gradually understood. Only by gathering the emperors of the world together could they fight against the primordial races. Who were emperors? All of them were top-tier existences in Tianhuang mainland. If there were no peerless experts suppressing and commanding the world, who would be willing to bow down and obey orders? Not even senior? Su Zimo asked. No, the old storyteller shook his head. Be it in terms of reputation or combat strength, I'm far inferior. With my identity as the storyteller of Enigma Palace, I might be able to gather some emperors. However, if we're counting on us to fight against the primordial races, I'm afraid it won't bode well for us. Su Zimo frowned with a heavy heart. In that case, if the primordial races joined forces and launched an unprecedented war against the human race, there was a high chance that the human race would be suppressed completely. At that time, the primordial races would regain control of Tianhuang mainland. The fate of the human race would be the same as in the primordial era. They would be enslaved and used as food while losing their freedom. The old storyteller thought for a moment and continued, of course, you guys don't have to be too pessimistic. There are still some variables in this lifetime after all. With that said, the old storyteller smiled and looked at Su Zimo. Su Zimo was stunned. The old storyteller nodded. Firstly, you have a clone that cultivates among the dragons. Furthermore, Your status is noble and you're the young master of the dragons. I believe that given your temperament, if the human race is in trouble, your dragon phoenix true body will definitely not sit idly by. Su Zimo nodded. If the human race was truly in trouble, the dragon phoenix true body would do its best to persuade the dragons to help the human race. The old storyteller continued. Secondly, the birth of the taboos. In the primordial era, 2 of the 3 taboos have already appeared. Furthermore, both of them are currently on the side of the human race. Their only weakness is that they have yet to truly grow. Su Zimo did not reply. Actually, there was a high chance that this lifetime would be an unprecedented situation where the 3 primordial taboos would gather. If there was sufficient time, the 3 primordial taboos would grow and the primordial races would definitely have no chance of winning. Unfortunately, the primordial races would not give them too much time. There's a third variable. The old storyteller looked at Su Zimo and paused for a moment. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Could the old storyteller have divined the existence of Wu Dao's true body? Actually, Wu Dao's true body was the greatest variable. Pausing for a moment, the old storyteller continued, the third variable is you. In this lifetime, the human race lacks a peerless expert who can command the world. Your body is perfectly fused with the creation Qinglian. Your future accomplishments are immeasurable. At that point, Su Zimo was certain that the old storyteller did not know of the existence of Wu Dao's true body despite his divine powers. Senior, your expectations are too high, Su Zimo laughed bitterly. I've only just entered the conjoint body realm and am not even a half-martial ancestor, let alone command the world and make emperors submit to my orders. That's why this is the variable. The old storyteller said, in this lifetime, a war between the primordial races and the human race is inevitable. If you can grow into that peerless expert before that, the fate of the human race will change. You once changed the fates of all living beings. I hope that you can defy the heavens and change the fates of the human race as well. Chapter 1468. The old storyteller had high hopes for Su Zimo. Of course, as the old storyteller said, this was a variable. Su Zimo still had a long way to go if he wanted to grow to the point where all the emperors in the world would submit to him. But now, the situation in Tianhuang mainland was changing rapidly. There was not much time left for Su Zimo. As he spoke, everyone entered Enigma Palace under the old storyteller's lead. They could not see the full appearance of Enigma Palace from the outside. It was only after entering the territory of Enigma Palace that they could truly sense the passage of time. That shock was far from what other sects and factions could compare to. Suddenly, the old storyteller frowned and exclaimed softly. His gaze shifted and landed on an area of Enigma Palace. Su Zimo looked over as well. A gigantic palace stood in that area. It was 1,000 feet tall and soared into the skies. It was divided into 9 levels and each level could accommodate more than 100,000 people. There were 3 words written on the signboard of the palace, Book Collection Hall. Old man, what's wrong? Lin Xuanji asked casually when he saw the old storyteller's strange expression. An outsider came, the old storyteller's expression darkened and his words were shocking. Lin Xuanji was shocked and asked, what do you mean? An outsider came to the book collection hall? The book collection hall stored many ancient secret manuals. The most important things inside were not only cultivation techniques and secret manuals, but also historical records and biographies. The book collection hall was an important place of Enigma Palace, and even the palace lord of Enigma Palace could not enter casually. If an outsider entered the book collection hall, it would be terrible. I'll go take a look. Lin Xuanji moved and was about to run over after saying that. He left a long time ago, the old storyteller harumphed coldly. These people in the palace are truly a bunch of trash. They were fooled and didn't even know that an outsider came to the book collection hall. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he murmured, could it be him? The old storyteller nodded slightly. If I'm not wrong, the bloodline that died outside Enigma Palace was refined by this person as well. Monk Daming. The last doubt in Su Zimo's heart was finally resolved. Initially, he had his suspicions about why Monk Daming would set up such a trap for the sake of refining his bloodline. Firstly, there weren't many bloodlines left behind in this battle. Secondly, this was in front of Enigma Palace. He had taken a huge risk to come here and refine the bloodline. It was not in line with Monk Daming's character. It was only now that Su Zimo understood. Monk Daming's true goal for him to head to Enigma Palace and fight against the cultivators of Enigma Palace was not to refine his bloodline, but to obtain Enigma Palace's library. Now that he thought about it, the refinement of the bloodline before Enigma Palace should have been done casually by Monk Daming after he arrived at the library. If Heavenly Secrets did not use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he might have had a chance of survival. However, an accident was bound to happen if he activated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in an intense battle against Yen Beichen. Heavenly Secrets viewed Monk Daming as his greatest opponent. However, right from the beginning, Monk Daming did not care about Heavenly Secrets at all. A single casual action from him cost the life of the most outstanding successor of Enigma Palace. Senior, do you know who that person is? Su Zimo probed. I've divined it before. The old storyteller paused for a moment and shook his head. However, I didn't manage to divine it. That person is extremely powerful. After the old storyteller appeared, Su Zimo felt that he was omniscient, omnipotent, and knowledgeable about the past and present. However, even the old storyteller could not divine Monk Daming's identity. Right now, Su Zimo was probably the only one who truly knew about Monk Daming. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment and did not tell the old storyteller about Monk Daming's identity. No matter what, Monk Daming had saved his life before. Furthermore, even Su Zimo did not dare to confirm if Monk Daming was righteous or evil at the moment. Let's go to the library to take a look and see what's missing, the old storyteller said indifferently and led Su Zimo's group to the library. The old storyteller flicked his sleeves gently and the door of the hall opened. Two figures were lying on the ground in front of the door. They were tied up and could not move at all. The two of them did not seem to have been muted and could not speak. They could only glare at the old storyteller with widened eyes. Senior brother, junior brother, you guys. Lin Xuanji froze for a moment. The two of them were the other two disciples of the old storyteller, DG and Huangji. Although I know that this isn't good, I don't know why, but I really feel like laughing. Ha! Lin Xuanji clutched his stomach in laughter. The two cultivators were ashamed and their faces were flushed red. The old storyteller extended his finger and swiped it across the void at the two of them. The ropes on their bodies were severed into pieces instantly. Both of them were at the conjoint body realm and the ropes that could tie them up were definitely not ordinary. However, the old storyteller had crippled them so casually. The two of them stood up and ran in front of the old storyteller, kneeling down. Master, this disciple failed to protect the book collection hall and deserves to die. Please punish me, Master. DG kowtowed repeatedly. Huangji had an ashamed expression as he whispered, Master, I've embarrassed you. Su Zimo lamented internally, the old storyteller's evaluation is right. DG is old-fashioned and follows the rules while Huangji looks honest and sincere. Get up. It's not your fault. The old storyteller did not have the intention to blame them and continued asking, do you guys know why he came to the library? I don't know, Huangji replied honestly. However, that person did not stay in the library for long before leaving. He said that he was here to take a look at the Mystic Heaven record. Once he's done reading it, he'll definitely return it and won't spread it. Mystic Heaven record. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. That was the foundation of Enigma Palace. It was created by Fairy Ling Long and was all-encompassing. The ancient human emperor had to perfect it before it was finally formed. To think that it would be stolen by Monk Daming today. That was a huge sum of money. The old storyteller did not enter the hall and merely closed his eyes to sense for a moment before nodding. He has indeed taken away the Mystic Heaven record. I deserve to die. I deserve to die. DG knelt down once more and kowtowed. His forehead was covered in blood and he had no intention of stopping. "Senior brother, hurry and get up. Don't damage your head." Lin Xuanji hurried forward and pulled DG up from the ground forcefully. "Fu-fu." Suddenly, the old storyteller laughed. DG and Huang Ji were both confused. The two of them even felt like dying. They didn't know how the old storyteller could still laugh. "Impressive," the old storyteller praised, "to think that he would come to Enigma Palace and steal the Mystic Heaven record. Impressive, impressive." "Master, why are you praising him? The loss of the Mystic Heaven record is a huge matter." Huang Ji could not help but ask. "Forget it, let him be." The old storyteller smiled casually. "That person is rather interesting. He merely said that he wanted to borrow the book. Furthermore, he promised that he wouldn't spread it and would return it." Chapter 1469. Standing in front of the library, Su Zimo suddenly recalled something. This was his speculation regarding monk Daming's identity. According to the old storyteller, there were many ancient books in the library that recorded many things. If that was the case, there was a high chance that he would be able to verify it in the books. "Senior, can I enter the library to take a look?" Su Zimo said, "I won't look at the cultivation techniques and secret skills of Enigma Palace. I merely want to look for historical records from tens of thousands of years ago to verify some things." "How can that do?" Before the old storyteller could reply, DG glared and said in a deep voice, "Who are you? The library is an important place. How can an outsider like you enter so casually?" Lin Xuanji pursed his lips. "Senior brother, stop talking. Didn't an outsider enter earlier on and even steal the Xiantian record? If anyone from Enigma Palace finds out about this, it'll definitely cause a huge uproar." DG's face flushed red from being mocked. However, he still argued, "That's different. Since you've already made a mistake, you can't repeat it." "That's enough." The old storyteller waved it off and nodded to Su Zimo. "Of course, you're qualified to take a look. However, there are many books in the library and the historical records are as vast as the sea. Why don't you tell me which year you want to take a look and let Xuanji bring you there directly? That way, you won't have to waste your effort searching for it." "About 30,000 to 40,000 years ago," Su Zimo replied ambiguously. "All right," the old storyteller looked at Lin Xuanji. "Bring Araki Takashi in." The old storyteller glanced sideways and smiled when he saw that Demoness G was also curious. "If you're curious, follow me in and take a look as well." "Master, you mustn't do that." DG could not hold it in and stood out once more, saying in a deep voice, "It's one thing for you to make an exception once, but how can you do it again and again? Where are the rules of the sect?" "She's the successor of ancestral Master Linglong. Do you think she's qualified?" The old storyteller glared at DG and asked with a huff. DG was taken aback. He stammered, Then he should be qualified." "Brat, are you trying to ascend to the heavens?" The old storyteller pointed at Earth Machine's nose and scolded him, "How dare you come out and tell me what to do now? How dare you talk to me about the rules of the sect?" On the other side, Lin Xuanji waved to Su Zimo and Demoness G. "Let's go, I'll bring you guys in." After being scolded by the old storyteller, Earth Machine had completely wilted. He was so scared that he did not even dare to breathe loudly. As for the old storyteller, he looked at the backs of Su Zimo and the other two. He stroked the 3 locks of long beard on his chest and muttered softly, "The major event from 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. The battle between the Blood Demon and Monk Daming? In the Book Collection Palace. There was a stone pillar that reached the heavens. It was so thick that it would require dozens of people to wrap their arms around it. It stood in the middle of the hall and connected the entire library. Many ancient books were placed around the stone pillars. They were densely packed together. There were even more ancient books and bamboo slips on the walls of the hall. Lin Xuanji was rather familiar with this place and led Su Zimo and Demoness Ji in, stopping after dozens of steps. The approximate events that happened 30,000 and 40,000 years ago are recorded in these ancient books. Take a look. Lin Xuanji pointed to an ancient book on the wall and said, Thank you. Su Zimo thanked him and walked forward, picking up an ancient book casually and browsing through it. Demoness G leaned forward and picked up a book as well, reading it. After a long time, Demoness G was a little impatient. Initially, she came in to take a look out of curiosity. Who knew that the contents were so boring that she lost interest after a casual glance? However, Su Zimo was still browsing through it bit by bit, as though he was searching for something. Demoness G did not leave either. She accompanied him quietly at the side and picked up an ancient book casually to pass the time. On the other side, Su Zimo flipped open another ancient book. After flipping through a few pages, he suddenly paused. The ancient book recorded the battle between the blood demon Dao Lord and Monk Daming 40,000 years ago. The records of that battle were similar to what Monk Yuan Bei said. The two of them fought 3 times without a victor being decided. After the final battle, both of them went missing. Their fate was unknown and their whereabouts were unknown. To date, they had not appeared and should have died long ago. What Su Zimo wanted to see was not that battle. It was about the background of Monk Daming. There was a sentence recorded in that ancient book. Monk Daming is not human, but a remnant of the Heavenly Eye race. He was abandoned by the Heavenly Eye race and was later taken in by Daming Monastery. True enough. That sentence confirmed Su Zimo's guess on 6-Star Mountain. Monk Daming was not human, but of the Heavenly Eye race. Back when he met Monk Daming for the first time in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo vaguely saw a blood scar on Monk Daming's glabella. However, the blood scar was covered by Monk Daming's long hair and was not obvious. It was only when he witnessed Monk Daming fighting against the Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestor on 6-Star Mountain that he saw it clearly. That blood scar was way too similar to the Heavenly Eye of the Heavenly Eye race. That was also the reason why the blood scar was able to defend against Qinglian's sword and the essence spirit secret skill of the Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestor. That was because the Heavenly Eye was the strongest method of the Heavenly Eye race to begin with. In that case, Monk Daming had not truly used his trump card, the Heavenly Eye. He was merely defending with his Heavenly Eye. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the apocalyptic scene would be if that Heavenly Eye were to open and release an attack. At the same time, that resolved another doubt in Su Zimo's mind. The skeleton in the stone coffin deep underground back then was Monk Daming. However, Monk Daming was someone from 40,000 years ago. Monk Daming had been trapped in the underground stone coffin for 40,000 years. Even a conjoint body mighty figure with a lifespan of 20,000 years would have exhausted their lifespans and died a long time ago, let alone Dharma Dao Jun. However, Monk Daming did not die. Instead, he appeared out of nowhere in this generation. Although the Mingwang prayer beads played a part in that, there was no way Monk Daming could have lived for more than 40,000 years. Today, Su Zimo finally understood. That was because Monk Daming was not human to begin with, but of the Heavenly Eye race. Even though he was a remnant of the Heavenly Eye race, his lifespan at the Dharma characteristic realm far exceeded that of humans. That was the reason why he could last for 40,000 years in the stone coffin. After resolving that mystery, Su Zimo was prepared to leave. Right then, he swept his gaze and caught sight of the ancient book in Demoness G's hands. His heart skipped a beat as he asked, "What's recorded in that ancient book of yours?" Nothing much. There was a change in the fiend sex 20,000 years ago. Demoness G shrugged and replied casually, 20,000 years ago. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. Let me take a look. According to the timeline, there was a tribulation of 10,000 demons 30,000 years ago. There was a war in the Great Qian Empire 10,000 years ago. In that case, something major might have happened 20,000 years ago. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.